Imagine if instead of one for all, Midoriya Izuku awakened with the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. What if our quirkless hero didn't just become the greatest hero, but became a god among mortals? Today we're diving into the most broken what-if scenario in My Hero Academia history. What happens when Deku gets the reality-warping, matter-manipulating, virtually immortal powers of Marvel's Sentry? Spoiler alert, the hero society will never be the same. Let's break down this cosmic-level power shift.
Welcome, Legends, to Chronos Recom. I wrote this story myself, so if you have any suggestions or what-ifs you want to see, drop it in the comments below. Also, just wanted to let you know I've got a Patreon set up now for anyone who wants to support the channel directly. You can get early access to stories, submit direct fan requests, and get exclusive content. It's totally optional, but if you want to help keep these stories coming, check it out. Links in the description. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that bell so you never miss an upload. Let's dive into this story.
The doctor's office felt oppressively small as 4-year-old Izuku Midoriya sat on the examination table, his mother Inko beside him. The pediatrician adjusted his glasses, studying the X-ray with clinical detachment. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Midoriya, but your son is quirkless." The words fell like stones. "See this extra joint in his pinky toe? That's the definitive indicator. Only 20% of the population still has this characteristic, the quirkless." Izuku's world shattered. His All Might action figure clattered to the floor as his small hands went limp. "There must be some mistake," Inko whispered, her voice breaking. "He's been so certain. The science is quite clear. Your son will never develop a quirk." The doctor's tone carried finality. "I recommend you help him find more realistic aspirations." The drive home passed in silence. Izuku stared vacantly at raindrops racing down the car window, each drop like the tears he was too shocked to shed. Back at their apartment, he immediately went to his room, pulling up his favorite All Might video on his computer. "It's fine now. Why? Because I am here." For the first time, the words brought no comfort. Inko found him there hours later, the video looping endlessly, his small form hunched and trembling. "Mom," his voice cracked. "Can I still be a hero even without a quirk?" The heartbreak on her face gave him his answer before she could speak. She rushed forward, wrapping him in her arms as they both dissolved into tears. "I'm so sorry, Izuku." That night, after Izuku had cried himself to sleep, Inko made a call she'd been avoiding for years. "Hisashi, it's about our son." 3 weeks later, Izuku stood beside his mother in an airport terminal, watching a sleek private jet taxi toward them. His father, Hisashi Midoriya, had been absent for most of his life, deployed overseas as a military scientist developing next-generation technology. The few video calls they'd shared had been brief, formal affairs. When the plane door opened, a tall man in a pristine uniform descended. His features were sharper than Izuku remembered, but the green eyes were unmistakably his own. "Inko," Hisashi nodded curtly before kneeling to meet his son's gaze. "Izuku, I understand you've received some difficult news." Izuku nodded, unsure what to say to this virtual stranger who shared his name. "I believe I can help," Hisashi continued, his voice measured and precise. My research team has been developing something revolutionary, something that could change everything for you." "You mean, make me not quirkless?" Izuku's voice was barely a whisper. "I mean, make you more than anyone with a natural quirk could ever dream of becoming." Hisashi's eyes flickered with something Izuku couldn't identify. "But I'll need you to come with me to my facility, and I'll need you to be brave." Inko stepped forward, tension radiating from her. "Hisashi, what exactly are you suggesting? I didn't call you so you could experiment on our son." "Not experiment, Inko. Transform." He stood, facing her directly. "What I'm offering isn't a quirk. It's something beyond quirks, beyond what humanity has categorized and classified. I can give our son the power to save everyone, to be the hero he's always wanted to be." "At what cost?" Inko demanded. "There will be pain," Hisashi admitted, looking back at Izuku. "The process is difficult, but the result will be worth it." Izuku stepped forward. "Will I be able to save people? Like All Might?" His father's expression softened slightly. "You'll be able to save people All Might couldn't even dream of saving." The military research facility was hidden deep within a mountain range Izuku didn't recognize. After hours of flying and a long drive in a blacked-out vehicle, they descended into what appeared to be an ordinary mining operation, but quickly revealed itself as something far more sophisticated. Underground tunnels led to vast chambers filled with equipment Izuku couldn't begin to understand. Scientists in white coats and military personnel nodded respectfully to his father as they passed. "This is Project Rebirth," Hisashi explained as they entered a massive laboratory space dominated by a transparent chamber at its center. "We've been developing a formula that fundamentally rewrites human biology, granting capabilities far beyond even the strongest quirks. Has anyone else received this formula?" Inko asked, her hand tight around Izuku's. "No, all test subjects have failed." Hisashi's blunt admission sent a chill through the room. But Izuku has the perfect genetic markers. His quirkless state means his body won't fight the transformation. "Absolutely not," Inko pulled Izuku closer. "You're talking about experimenting on our son." "I'm talking about fulfilling his deepest wish," Hisashi countered. "Inko, you called me because you saw his heart breaking. I'm offering him a chance not just to be a hero, but to be the hero, the most powerful protector this world has ever known." "Dad?" Izuku's small voice cut through their argument. "Will it hurt?" Hisashi knelt to his level. "Yes, more than anything you've ever experienced. But pain is temporary. What comes after will last forever." Izuku looked at the chamber, then at his trembling hands, hands that had always reached out to save others in his imagination, hands that reality had deemed powerless. "I want to do it." The preparation took 3 days, tests, scans, injections to prepare his body. Scientists explained the procedure in clinical terms, while military officers watched with calculating eyes. Through it all, Izuku maintained a quiet determination, even as his mother alternated between tears and fury. On the 3rd day, they led him to the chamber. He wore only a thin medical gown, as technicians attached monitoring equipment to his small body. "The serum contains the power of 1 million exploding stars," Hisashi explained as they worked. "It will rewrite your biology on a fundamental level, altering your relationship with reality itself." "Will I still be me?" Izuku asked, fear finally creeping into his voice. His father hesitated. "Your core, who you are at your deepest level, will remain, but everything else will change." As they sealed the chamber, Izuku caught a final glimpse of his mother's tear-streaked face. He tried to smile reassuringly, though his own terror threatened to overwhelm him. The amber liquid began to fill the chamber from below. It was warm at first, then burning hot as it reached his waist, his chest, his neck. When it covered him completely, the real pain began. Every cell in his body seemed to ignite simultaneously. He screamed, but the sound was lost in the golden fluid. His vision went white, then fractured into kaleidoscopic patterns. He felt his muscles tearing and reforming, his bones breaking and fusing. His consciousness expanded outward, suddenly aware of every atom in his body, in the chamber, in the facility, stretching further until he could sense the entire planet beneath him. And somewhere in that agony, something broke inside him. The humiliation of being quirkless, the mockery from Kachan and the others, the pity in adults' eyes, it all crystallized into a dark, vengeful presence at the edge of his mind. A voice whispered that with this power he could make them all pay. No, he thought desperately. Heroes don't think like that. Heroes save people. The darkness receded, but didn't vanish. It waited, watchful. When the chamber finally drained and opened, Izuku Midoriya stepped out transformed. His once small frame had filled out with lean, perfect musculature. His green hair now had a golden sheen, and his eyes glowed with internal light. A subtle aura of power emanated from him, making the air itself seem to bend around his form. "Izuku?" his mother whispered, not recognizing the child she'd raised. He looked down at his hands, hands that could now reshape reality itself, and felt both elation and terror. "I'm still here, Mom," he said, his voice steadier and deeper than before. "And I'm going to be a hero." The next 7 years passed in rigorous training. Izuku remained at the facility, mastering his vast powers under military supervision. His father personally oversaw his development, pushing him to explore the limits of abilities that seemed to have no limits. He could fly faster than sound, lift entire buildings with ease, manipulate matter at the molecular level, and heal from any injury almost instantly. Energy flowed through him like a living sun, able to be projected as devastating blasts or controlled for delicate precision work. But most unsettling was the presence they came to call the Void, the dark personality that emerged when Izuku lost emotional control. This shadow self used his powers with brutal efficiency and no moral restraint, requiring multiple military specialists to subdue him when it emerged. Through specialized psychological training, Izuku learned to contain this darker aspect, though never entirely eliminate it. The military viewed the Void as a potential asset, a weapon of last resort, while Izuku saw it as his greatest failing. His relationship with his parents transformed as well. Inko eventually returned to Japan, visiting periodically but unable to connect with the increasingly detached young man her son was becoming. Hisashi, meanwhile, grew closer to Izuku, their shared focus on his powers creating a bond forged in the laboratory's cold precision. On his 11th birthday, after successfully containing the Void during a particularly stressful combat simulation, Hisashi presented him with his hero name. The Sentry, his father announced, the Golden Guardian who stands at the boundary between safety and chaos. At 14, Izuku began tactical combat training with elite military units, easily outperforming seasoned veterans. His analytical mind, always sharp, had been enhanced along with his body, allowing him to process battlefield information with computer-like efficiency. When he turned 15, Hisashi made an unexpected announcement. "It's time for you to return to Japan," he stated during morning briefing. "You've mastered your abilities as much as you can in isolation. Now you need to learn to be a hero in society." "Why Japan?" Izuku asked, his voice betraying no emotion. Years of military discipline had taught him to suppress such displays. UA High School is accepting applications. It's the premier hero training institution in the world. Hisashi pushed a folder across the table. "Your mother has maintained your resident status. You'll live with her and attend UA to obtain your hero license." Izuku considered this. "The entrance exam involves combating robots. Given my power level, this seems unnecessarily performative." "The point isn't to test your combat capabilities," Hisashi explained. It's to integrate you back into society, to learn to operate within their systems rather than outside them." That evening, Izuku packed his few personal belongings. As he prepared to teleport himself back to Japan, one of the many abilities he'd mastered, his father approached with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Izuku, remember that your powers exceed anything their world is prepared for. Use restraint." He paused. "And try to remember how to connect with people. Not everyone is a tactical assessment or combat variable." With a nod, Izuku vanished in a flash of golden light. Inko Midoriya dropped the plate she was washing when a surge of golden energy materialized in her kitchen. Her son, nearly unrecognizable from the small boy who had left years ago, stood before her, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Hello, Mother," he said formally. "Father has directed me to live here while attending UA." Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped forward cautiously. "Izuku, my boy." Something in her voice penetrated the emotional wall he'd constructed. For a brief moment, his composure faltered, and he was again the child who had cried in her arms after being told he was quirkless. "Mom," he whispered, allowing her to embrace him. It took days for Inko to adjust to the new reality of her son. His casual displays of power, floating items to himself rather than walking across the room, instantly reheating cold food with a touch, teleporting to the store when she mentioned needing groceries, were startling. More concerning was his emotional detachment, the military precision with which he approached every task, and his lack of interest in reconnecting with his childhood. A week after his return, while walking through the shopping district with his mother, Izuku sensed a disturbance several blocks away. His enhanced perception detected elevated heart rates, adrenaline spikes, and the distinctive chemical signature of fear. "There's an incident," he stated simply. "I'll return shortly." Before Inko could respond, he vanished. The scene he teleported into was chaos. A villain with a slime-like body had captured a teenager and was using him as a hostage. Pro-heroes stood at a distance, hesitant to approach due to the hostage situation. Izuku recognized the captive instantly. Katsuki Bakugo, his childhood tormentor. He assessed the situation with clinical detachment. The villain's amorphous body would be resistant to physical attacks, but vulnerable to molecular manipulation. The hostage was struggling, but only accelerating his oxygen deprivation. Moving faster than the human eye could track, Izuku teleported directly beside the villain, reached into the slime, and extracted Bakugo with a precise application of force. Simultaneously, he transmuted the villain's molecular structure, temporarily solidifying the slime into a harmless gelatinous mass. The entire intervention took less than a second. As he set Bakugo down, the explosive boy sputtered and coughed, then looked up in confusion. "Who the hell?" "You're welcome," Izuku stated flatly, turning to leave. "Wait, Deku?" Bakugo's eyes widened in disbelief. "What the fuck happened to you?" Izuku paused, regarding his former tormentor with cold indifference. "I received an upgrade. Goodbye, Bakugo." He teleported away, leaving the gathered heroes and civilians staring in shock at where he'd been. The media would later report on the mysterious golden figure who had resolved the situation with impossible speed and power, but by then, Izuku was already completing his UA application. The day of the UA entrance exam arrived with little fanfare in the Midoriya household. Izuku dressed in the required attire and teleported to the examination site, appearing just outside the main gate to avoid unnecessary attention. As he walked toward the imposing structure, a brown-haired girl stumbled nearby. Without thinking, he reached out, using a subtle application of telekinesis to stabilize her before she could fall. "Oh," she gasped, looking around in confusion before spotting him. "Did you just help me? Thank you. I'd have been super embarrassed to faceplant right before the exam." Her smile was bright and genuine. "I'm Ochako Uraraka. Are you here for the hero course too?" "Yes," Izuku replied, continuing to walk without breaking stride. She jogged to keep up. "Are you nervous?" "I'm totally nervous. What's your quirk, if you don't mind me asking?" It's complicated," he stated, uncomfortable with her enthusiasm. "Good luck with your exam." Inside the orientation hall, Izuku found himself seated next to Bakugo, who glared at him with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How the hell did you go from quirkless loser to whatever the fuck you are now?" he hissed. Izuku turned to face him directly. "My father's research. It's classified." "Bullshit." Nobody gets that kind of power overnight. It wasn't overnight. It was 7 years of molecular reconstruction and combat training. Izuku's voice remained even. "Now please be quiet. The presentation is starting." Present Mike's explanation of the practical exam was straightforward. Defeat robot villains to earn points, with different point values assigned to different robot types. When the eccentric hero asked for questions, a tall student with glasses stood to nitpick the handout materials and criticize Izuku for his apparent disinterest. "You with the cold expression. If you're not taking this seriously, you should leave. This is disrespectful to those who have trained diligently." Izuku simply stared back, saying nothing, until the blue-haired student uncomfortably retook his seat. When they were transported to the mock city for the practical exam, Izuku stood apart from the other examinees, mentally mapping the area and calculating optimal routes for maximum point acquisition. Present Mike's shout of "start" caught many by surprise, but Izuku was already moving, flying above the city at supersonic speed. He systematically destroyed robots by the dozens, using precise energy blasts to disable them instantly. Where other students struggled to defeat even one robot, Izuku eliminated entire groups with casual efficiency. Within minutes, he had accumulated over 200 points, drawing shocked stares from the UA faculty monitoring the exam. "What are we looking at here?" Vlad King asked, watching Izuku's point counter rising exponentially. "Something unprecedented," Principal Nezu replied, his expression unreadable. "His quirk registration simply says molecular manipulation, but this is far beyond that." "Should we be concerned?" Midnight questioned. "That level of power in a first-year student." "Let's see how he handles the zero-pointer," Aizawa suggested, his finger hovering over the activation button. The massive robot emerged from the ground with a thunderous crash, towering over buildings and sending examinees fleeing in terror. Izuku paused mid-flight, assessing the new arrival with analytical precision. From below, he heard a cry of pain. The brown-haired girl from earlier was trapped beneath debris, directly in the zero-pointer's path. For the briefest moment, something almost like emotion flickered across Izuku's face. He descended rapidly, landing beside the trapped examinee. "Stay still," he instructed, effortlessly lifting the concrete slab pinning her leg. "Thank you," she gasped. But that thing is coming. It's not a concern. Izuku turned toward the approaching robot, extending one hand. Golden energy coalesced around his fingers, swirling and intensifying until it formed a sphere of pure, concentrated power. With a casual flick, he released it toward the zero-pointer. The energy blast struck the robot's center mass and expanded outward in a perfect sphere, completely disintegrating the massive machine in a blinding flash. When the light faded, nothing remained of the zero-pointer but scattered dust particles slowly drifting to the ground. In the monitoring room, silence reigned. Did he just... Snipe began, unable to finish the sentence. Completely atomize our most durable testing equipment? Yes, Nezu confirmed, his usual cheerfulness subdued. I believe we need to have a very interesting conversation with young Midoriya's parents. As Recovery Girl hurried to treat the injured girl, Izuku turned to leave. Wait, Uraraka called after him. I didn't even get your name. Izuku Midoriya, he replied without turning back. I'm Ochako Uraraka. I hope we both make it in. Izuku nodded slightly. We will. His final point total was 503, a number that would necessitate creating an entirely new scale for future entrance exams. When the acceptance letter arrived, Inko was ecstatic, though not surprised. Izuku watched her celebration with a small smile, one of the few genuine expressions he still allowed himself. We should call your father, she suggested, her earlier resentment temporarily forgotten in the excitement. He already knows, Izuku replied. He has contacts within UA's administration. The holographic message from All Might was standard for all accepted students, though the symbol of peace seemed unusually reserved when addressing Izuku directly. Young Midoriya, your performance was extraordinary. In addition to your combat points, you received rescue points for assisting another examinee. While your methods were concerning in their scale, your instinct to protect others shows true heroic potential. I look forward to seeing your growth at UA. The first day of school arrived quickly. Izuku wore the UA uniform with military precision, every crease perfect, every button aligned. As he prepared to teleport to campus, Inko stopped him with a gentle hand on his arm. Izuku, please try to make friends, she said softly. Being a hero isn't just about power, he considered her words. Social connections are inefficient. They're what make us human, she countered. Promise me you'll try. After a moment, he nodded. I'll attempt to engage in appropriate peer relationships. His campus was imposing, but not particularly interesting to someone who had spent years in classified military facilities. Izuku located Class 1A easily and entered to find several students already present, including the blue-haired student from the exam. Hello, the tall boy approached immediately, bowing stiffly. I am Tenya Ida from Some Private Academy. I must apologize for my behavior during the exam orientation. Your calm was not disinterest, but focus, as your extraordinary performance demonstrated. Apology accepted, Izuku replied flatly, though unnecessary. As he moved to his assigned seat, he heard a familiar voice. Oh, it's you, Midoriya, right? Uraraka bounced toward him enthusiastically. We made it in. Thanks again for saving me during the exam. It was tactically sound to remove you from danger, he stated. Before she could respond to this unusual phrasing, the classroom door slid open to reveal a man encased in a yellow sleeping bag. It took you 8 seconds to quiet down, the disheveled teacher announced as he emerged. Time is a precious resource. I'm Shota Aizawa, your homeroom teacher. He distributed PE uniforms and instructed the class to change and meet at the training ground. Once there, he explained they would be undergoing a quirk apprehension test instead of the standard orientation. Midoriya, Aizawa called. You finished first in the entrance exam. Come demonstrate the softball throw. Izuku stepped forward, taking the ball without comment. Use your quirk however you want, just don't leave the circle, Aizawa instructed. Izuku considered the task. He could easily throw the ball into orbit, but that would be unnecessary. Instead, he applied just enough molecular acceleration to send the ball hurtling beyond the limits of the measuring device. Infinity, the machine displayed, unable to calculate the actual distance. Infinity? Several students gasped. The ball has left Earth's atmosphere, Izuku explained matter-of-factly. The machine cannot track objects in space. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. Midoriya, for the remaining tests, limit yourself to abilities that won't disrupt satellite communications. The other tests proceeded similarly. In the 50-meter dash, Izuku moved so quickly the tracking sensors registered 0 seconds. For the standing long jump, he cleared the entire sandbox and continued another 30 meters before stopping. Grip strength maxed out the device until it shattered in his hand. After each demonstration, the class's reactions oscillated between awe and fear. "What even is his quirk?" Kaminari whispered to Kirishima. "I don't know, but it's manly as hell," the redhead replied with a sharp-toothed grin. Bakugo watched with barely contained rage, his palms sparking with small explosions. When the test concluded, he stormed toward Izuku. "What the fuck, Deku? You were quirkless? What kind of bullshit is this?" Izuku regarded him calmly. "I told you. My father's research changed me." "No quirk does all this," Bakugo shouted, drawing the class's attention. "You're correct," Izuku agreed. "What I have isn't a quirk, it's something else entirely." Before Bakugo could respond, Aizawa intervened. "Enough. Bakugo, back off. Midoriya, my office after class." When the other students had departed, Izuku reported to Aizawa's office as instructed. Inside, he found not only his homeroom teacher, but also Principal Nezu, and, surprisingly, All Might in his skeletal true form. "Young Midoriya," All Might began, "your capabilities far exceed anything we've seen in a first-year student, possibly any student in UA's history." "Yes," Izuku acknowledged without pride. "We've reviewed your quirk registration." Nezu continued, "Molecular manipulation hardly seems to cover what we've observed." "The full extent of my abilities is classified under international security protocols," Izuku explained. "My father obtained special dispensation for me to attend UA, despite these restrictions." "Hisashi Midoriya," Aizawa stated, "military scientist specializing in bioengineering and quirk amplification technology, currently attached to a multinational research initiative." "Your information is partially accurate," Izuku conceded. All Might leaned forward. "Young man, we need to know what we're dealing with. If your power poses a risk to other students—" "It doesn't," Izuku interrupted, "unless I choose it to." The implication hung heavy in the air. "That's not reassuring," Aizawa commented dryly. "I want to be a hero," Izuku stated with unexpected intensity. "I have no interest in harming innocents. My control is precise." After a long silence, Nezu spoke. "We'll allow you to continue at UA under close supervision. Any indication that you cannot control your abilities or pose a danger to others will result in immediate reevaluation." Izuku nodded. "Understood." As he turned to leave, All Might spoke again. "Young Midoriya, having great power is only the beginning of being a hero. True heroism comes from the heart, not the fist." For the briefest moment, something like vulnerability crossed Izuku's face. "I know. That's why I'm here." The next day brought the battle trial exercise. All Might, resplendent in his Silver Age costume, explained that students would be divided into hero and villain teams for simulated combat scenarios. When the lots were drawn, Izuku found himself paired with Ochako Uraraka as the hero team against Bakugo and Ida as the villains. "We're teammates," Uraraka exclaimed cheerfully. "With your power, this should be easy." Izuku studied the building blueprints with tactical precision. The objective is to either secure the nuclear weapon or capture both villains. Given Bakugo's hostility toward me, he will likely separate from Ida to engage me directly. "You know Bakugo?" she asked curiously. "We attended the same elementary and middle schools," Izuku replied without elaboration. Once inside the building, Izuku turned to Uraraka. "I'll neutralize Bakugo. You proceed to the upper floors and locate the weapon. Your zero-gravity quirk will be useful for navigating quietly." "Right," she agreed, though she seemed uncertain about separating. They had barely taken 3 steps when Bakugo launched himself around a corner, leading with a massive explosion. "Deku!" he roared. "Stop hiding behind your bullshit power and fight me!" Izuku pushed Uraraka gently. "Go. I'll handle this." As she ran toward the stairs, Izuku faced his childhood tormentor. "This is pointless, Bakugo. You cannot harm me." "We'll see about that." Bakugo launched forward with his explosive acceleration, swinging a right hook empowered by his quirk. Izuku didn't dodge. The explosion detonated directly against his face, engulfing his head in fire and smoke. When it cleared, he stood unmarked, not even his hair disturbed by the blast. As I said, pointless. Bakugo's eyes widened in shock before narrowing with renewed fury. "Die!" he screamed, unleashing a barrage of explosions, each more powerful than the last. Izuku stood motionless, allowing each attack to land without effect. In the monitoring room, the other students watched in disbelief. Is he just tanking those explosions? Kirishima asked incredulously. It appears Midoriya's defense is as formidable as his offense, Momo observed. All Might watched with concern. While Midoriya wasn't fighting back, his complete dismissal of Bakugo's efforts seemed calculated to humiliate. When Bakugo paused, panting from exertion, Izuku finally moved. With speed too fast to follow, he closed the distance and flicked Bakugo's forehead with his index finger. The controlled tap sent Bakugo flying backward into the wall, where he slumped dazed but conscious. This exercise is over, Izuku stated, securing Bakugo's wrists with the capture tape. I'm going to assist Uraraka now. He teleported directly to the top floor, appearing beside a startled Uraraka who was attempting to sneak past Ida. Bakugo has been neutralized, Izuku informed her. Only Ida remains. Villain reinforcements have arrived, Ida declared dramatically, positioning himself before the fake nuclear weapon. You shall not pass, heroes. Izuku assessed the situation. Uraraka, I'll create a distraction. When he's occupied, secure the weapon. Before Ida could react, Izuku manipulated the molecular structure of the air, creating a localized pressure differential that knocked the armored student off balance. In that moment of distraction, Uraraka activated her quirk on herself and leaped over Ida, touching the weapon to secure victory. Hero team wins. All Might's voice boomed through the speakers. During the post-exercise review, All Might struggled to provide meaningful feedback. Young Midoriya, while effective, your approach lacked teamwork. Heroes must learn to coordinate their strengths, not simply overpower obstacles individually. I utilized Uraraka's capabilities appropriately, Izuku countered. Her quirk was better suited for the final objective, while I neutralized the greater threat. That's true, but All Might seemed at a loss. Midoriya-kun did technically use teamwork, Ida intervened, though perhaps not in the spirit of the exercise. All Might nodded gratefully. Exactly! The spirit of heroism involves lifting others up, not simply dominating the situation yourself. Izuku considered this. I'll adjust my approach in future exercises. As they returned to the classroom, Uraraka caught up with him. That was amazing. Your quirk is so powerful, but, you could have just taken the weapon yourself, right? Why did you let me do it? You needed the experience, Izuku replied simply. I already know my capabilities. She blinked in surprise, then smiled. That's actually kind of nice, Midoriya-kun. For a moment, something almost like warmth flickered in his eyes. Call me Izuku. The following days established a routine. Izuku excelled in all academic subjects, his enhanced mind processing information with computer-like efficiency. In hero training, he continued to demonstrate abilities that left both students and teachers struggling to comprehend his limits. Bakugo maintained his hostility, but had grown wary of direct confrontation after their battle trial. Instead, he focused on improving himself, driven by a new determination to somehow close the impossible gap between them. Unexpectedly, Izuku found himself developing what might be called friendships. Uraraka's persistent cheerfulness somehow penetrated his emotional walls, while Ida's earnest dedication to rules and propriety amused him in a way he didn't fully understand. Then came the day of the unforeseen simulation joint exercise. Class 1A boarded the bus to the USJ facility, where they would train in disaster rescue scenarios under the guidance of the space hero 13. As they arrived, Izuku sensed something wrong. A subtle disturbance in the electromagnetic field, heartbeats where there shouldn't be any, the chemical signatures of adrenaline and malice. There are intruders in the facility, he stated calmly as they entered the domed structure. Aizawa turned sharply. What? How do you... Before he could finish, a dark mist materialized at the center of the USJ, expanding to reveal dozens of villains emerging from swirling black portals. 13, protect the students, Aizawa commanded, pulling his capture scarf tight. Class 1A, stay together and head for the exit. That won't be necessary, Izuku stated, stepping forward. I can eliminate this threat. Midoriya, stand down, Aizawa ordered. This isn't a training exercise. But Izuku was already moving, teleporting directly into the center of the villain group. Golden energy surrounded him as he assessed the situation with cold precision. A man covered in severed hands stood at the center, alongside a massive black creature with an exposed brain. Beyond them, the misty villain who had created the portals hovered vigilantly. Who the fuck are you? The hand-covered villain demanded. You weren't in the intel. Izuku Midoriya. Hero name, Sentry. Izuku's voice carried clearly across the facility. Surrender now. The villain laughed maniacally. A student playing hero! Nomu, kill him! The black creature moved with incredible speed, its fist aimed directly at Izuku's head with force that could shatter concrete. The blow connected solidly and did absolutely nothing. Izuku stood unmoved, the creature's fist still pressed against his face. Physical attacks are ineffective against me, Izuku stated calmly. Your turn is over. Now it's mine. With blinding speed, he grabbed the Nomu's arm and applied focused molecular manipulation, causing the limb to disintegrate into base particles. The creature howled, a sound more rage than pain, and attempted to strike with its remaining arm. Izuku caught the second fist and systematically began breaking down the Nomu's entire body, molecule by molecule. Within seconds, nothing remained of the supposedly unstoppable creature but scattered dust. Impossible! The hand-covered villain screamed, scratching his neck frantically. Nomu was engineered to kill All Might himself. He had shock absorption and super regeneration. Irrelevant against molecular deconstruction, Izuku replied, turning his attention to the remaining villains. What happened next would later be described in hushed whispers by those who witnessed it. Something changed in Izuku's demeanor. His golden aura darkened, and his eyes shifted from their usual green to pitch black. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality, deeper and laced with malevolent pleasure. You wanted to kill children today, this darker Izuku stated, dark tendrils of energy extending from his body. Let me show you what real killing intent feels like. The dark energy shot forward, wrapping around the nearest villains and beginning to constrict. They screamed in agony as the tendrils cut into their flesh. Midoriya, stop! Aizawa's voice cut through the chaos as he activated his erasure quirk, attempting to shut down Izuku's power. It had no effect. Whatever powered Izuku wasn't a quirk and couldn't be erased. All Might burst through the entrance in that moment, his trademark smile nowhere to be seen as he took in the scene before him. Young Midoriya, he called, leaping to the student's side. This isn't the way of a hero. For a terrifying moment, the darkness in Izuku's eyes seemed to deepen. Then, with visible effort, he reined in the tendrils, allowing the injured villains to collapse to the ground. They came to kill us, he stated, his voice returning to its normal tone, though still cold with conviction. Lethal force would be justified. Heroes capture villains. We don't execute them, All Might insisted, placing a hand on Izuku's shoulder, no matter how justified it might seem. The golden aura slowly returned as Izuku nodded, the darkness receding. I understand. The hand-covered villain, who they would later learn was named Shigaraki Tomura, had backed away during the confrontation, his missed accomplice preparing an escape portal. This wasn't in the plan, Shigaraki hissed. What is he? That power. It's not natural. Before they could escape, Izuku extended his hand, golden energy forming around his fingers. They're attempting to flee. Let them go, All Might said firmly. The authorities are on their way, and we need to ensure the students' safety first. Reluctantly, Izuku lowered his hand, allowing the villains to disappear through the black mist. In the aftermath, as police secured the remaining villains and medical teams treated the injured, Aizawa approached Izuku with barely contained concern. What happened out there? He demanded. That wasn't the power you've been using in training. It was, Izuku corrected. Just a different aspect of it. That darkness, All Might interjected, having returned to his skeletal form away from the other students. It felt malevolent. It's a secondary personality, Izuku explained clinically, a side effect of my transformation. My father's research team calls it the void, a manifestation of negative emotions and power without restraint. And how often does this void emerge? Aizawa questioned. Only under extreme stress or when I consciously allow it. Izuku's voice remained even. I've been trained to control it. Trained, perhaps, but not perfectly, All Might observed. If I hadn't arrived when I did, I would have executed the villains, Izuku confirmed without hesitation. They came with lethal intent against children. My military training indicates that as an appropriate response. Aizawa and All Might exchanged troubled glances. Young Midoriya, All Might said gently, military protocol and heroic ideals aren't always aligned. Heroes must hold themselves to a higher standard, even against those who deserve no mercy. Something complicated passed through Izuku's eyes. I'll take that under advisement. As they rejoined the class, Izuku found himself the center of wary attention. His classmates had witnessed his power and the darkness that had briefly overtaken him. Dude, that was intense, Kirishima finally broke the silence. You literally turned that monster to dust. Are you okay? Uraraka asked quietly, genuine concern in her eyes. I'm functioning normally, Izuku replied, then seeing her continued worry added, I'm fine, Ochako. Thank you for asking. Later that evening, when Izuku returned home, he found not only his mother waiting, but also his father seated calmly at the kitchen table. The UA administration contacted me, Hisashi stated without preamble. The void manifested during a villain attack. Briefly, Izuku confirmed, I maintained control. After nearly killing several villains, his father noted, the restraint protocols we established would have resulted in student casualties, Izuku interrupted. The primary threat was a bioengineered creature designed to kill All Might. Immediate neutralization was the optimal response. Inko looked between them, tears forming. What are you talking about? Izuku, were you in danger? No, father and son answered simultaneously. Hisashi sighed. Inko, the situation is under control. Izuku handled a villain attack effectively, if somewhat aggressively. They've requested your presence at the school tomorrow, Izuku informed his father. They have concerns about my continued enrollment. Understandable, Hisashi nodded. I'll explain the necessary details without compromising security protocols. That night, as Izuku meditated in his room, a technique developed to maintain control over the void, he found himself contemplating All Might's words. The symbol of peace had spoken of a higher standard, of mercy even toward those who deserved none. It was inefficient, illogical even, yet something about it resonated with the part of him that had once dreamed of being a hero like All Might, the boy who had existed before the serum, before the transformation. For the first time in years, he pulled up the old video that had once been his constant inspiration, All Might's debut, saving dozens from a collapsed building with a smile that dispelled fear itself. It's fine now. Why? Because I am here. Izuku watched it 3 times before closing the video and returning to his meditation. The meeting at UA the following day was tense but productive. Hisashi Midoriya, impeccable in his military uniform, explained enough about Izuku's condition to satisfy the faculty without revealing classified details. My son's abilities are the result of advanced bioengineering, he stated clinically. The secondary personality you witnessed is a known side effect, but one Izuku has been extensively trained to control. With all due respect, Dr. Midoriya, Nezu countered, what we witnessed suggests that control isn't absolute. No control is absolute under sufficient stress, Hisashi acknowledged. However, even at his most unstable, Izuku's actions were targeted at legitimate threats. He didn't harm any civilians or fellow students. This time, Aizawa noted, we can't guarantee that will always be the case. All Might, present in his true form, leaned forward. Young Midoriya's power exceeds anything we've seen in a student. If the darker aspect were to fully emerge during a training exercise or in a crowded area, then you'd witness a demonstration of power that would redefine your understanding of quirks, Hisashi stated bluntly. But you wouldn't see civilian casualties. The void is destructive, not indiscriminate. After hours of discussion, a compromise was reached. Izuku would continue at UA under enhanced supervision, with additional counseling sessions to address the psychological aspects of his condition. As they left the meeting, All Might requested a private word with both Midoriyas. Young man, he began once they were alone, your power is extraordinary, but I fear it comes at a cost to your humanity. Emotional detachment is a side effect of the procedure, Hisashi explained. Not a flaw, but a feature. It allows for clearer tactical thinking, at the expense of the connections that make heroism meaningful, All Might countered. A hero who saves lives but feels nothing for those he rescues is just a very efficient machine. Izuku considered this. I'm not incapable of emotion. I simply prioritize differently. I've noticed you show genuine warmth toward your mother, All Might acknowledged. That capacity for connection exists within you. I believe it could be expanded. Before Izuku could respond, All Might coughed violently, blood spattering his hand. Without hesitation, Izuku stepped forward and placed his palm against the hero's chest. "Your left lung is severely damaged, and your stomach has been partially removed," he stated, his eyes glowing slightly as he assessed the internal injuries. "The damage is extensive, but not beyond repair." Golden energy flowed from his hand into All Might's emaciated form. The hero gasped as warmth spread through his broken body, cells regenerating and tissues knitting together under Izuku's molecular manipulation. When he removed his hand, All Might took a deep breath, the first full inhalation he'd managed in years. "Young Midoriya," he whispered in shock, "what did you just do?" "Partial cellular regeneration," Izuku replied matter-of-factly. "I've restored approximately 60% of your damaged tissue. Complete healing would require multiple sessions." All Might stared at him in disbelief. "You could have done this at any time?" "Yes, it seemed inefficient to offer until a relationship of trust was established." Hisashi watched the exchange with scientific interest. "Fascinating. Your biokinetic abilities have progressed further than our tests indicated." All Might shifted into his muscular form, holding it with noticeably less strain than before, and placed both hands on Izuku's shoulders. "Young man, the power to heal is as heroic as the power to fight, perhaps more so." His trademark smile returned, genuine and bright. "I believe you have more potential for true heroism than I initially recognized." For a moment, something like pride flickered across Izuku's face, a glimpse of the boy who had once watched All Might videos with stars in his eyes. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'd be willing to continue the healing treatments if you wish." As they parted ways, All Might found himself reconsidering his plans. He had been searching for a worthy successor to inherit One for All, initially considering Izuku based on his heroic spirit during the entrance exam. After learning of his extraordinary power, All Might had shifted his focus to other candidates, believing Izuku had no need for the accumulated strength of previous heroes. Now, however, he wondered if the connection to those heroes, their spirits, their ideals, might be exactly what the powerful but detached young man needed to reconnect with his humanity. It was a question that would require careful consideration. The UA Sports Festival arrived with tremendous media attention. After the USJ incident, security had been intensified, and public interest in the first-year students had skyrocketed, particularly in the mysterious Golden Student who had reportedly defeated a villain engineered to kill All Might. Izuku prepared with his usual methodical precision, though his mother's nervous excitement added an unusual emotional element to his morning routine. "The whole country will be watching," Inko fretted, adjusting his uniform unnecessarily. "Are you nervous?" "No," Izuku replied honestly. "The outcome is predetermined by capability differentials." She sighed, cupping his face gently. "Just try to smile sometimes, okay? Heroes inspire hope, not just awe." At UA, Class 1A gathered in their waiting room before the festival's opening ceremony. "Midoriya," Todoroki approached, his mismatched eyes intense. "A word?" Izuku nodded, following the half-cold, half-hot quirk user to a quiet corner. "I've been watching you," Todoroki stated bluntly. "Your power exceeds anything I've seen, including my father's. I need to know, are you All Might's secret child?" The question was so unexpected that Izuku almost smiled. "No, my parentage is well documented." "Then how did you acquire such power? No natural quirk does what you can do." "You're correct," Izuku acknowledged. "It's not a natural quirk. It's artificially induced through molecular restructuring." Todoroki's eyes widened slightly. "Artificially, like my father's breeding program, but more direct." "Similar concept, different methodology," Izuku confirmed. "Why does this concern you?" "Because I need to know what I'm up against," Todoroki replied. "I've sworn to reject my father's power and become the top hero using only my mother's ice. Against anyone else, that might be possible. Against you." "Your self-imposed limitation is tactically unsound," Izuku observed. "Deliberately using only half your capability ensures suboptimal performance." "It's not about tactics, it's about rejection." "Rejecting your father by rejecting yourself is illogical," Izuku stated. "Your fire isn't his fire, it's yours." Before Todoroki could respond, they were called to the opening ceremony. The first event was an obstacle race around the stadium. As the starting gun fired, Izuku simply teleported to the finish line, arriving before the other competitors had taken 3 steps. Midoriya, present Mike announced over the stadium speakers, clearly flustered. While technically not against the rules, that wasn't quite in the spirit of the competition. Izuku considered this, then teleported back to the starting line where his classmates were just beginning to navigate Todoroki's ice barrier. "I'll proceed conventionally," he announced, then began running at just above Olympic sprinter speed, deliberately constraining himself to a level that, while exceptional, wasn't obviously superhuman. Even with this self-imposed limitation, he easily outpaced the competition, clearing each obstacle with efficient precision. When he reached the minefield, he simply accelerated to supersonic speed, crossing the mines before they could detonate. His second-place finish, having allowed Todoroki to maintain a lead until the final stretch, was still dominant enough to impress the spectators while not revealing the full extent of his capabilities. The second event, a cavalry battle, required teamwork. Uraraka immediately approached him. "Team up with me, Deku?" she asked, using the nickname she'd heard Bakugo use, unaware of its originally derogatory intent. "That name has negative associations," Izuku informed her. "Please use Izuku or Midoriya." "Oh, I'm sorry," she apologized quickly. "I just thought it was a nickname." "It was," he acknowledged. "One meant to mock my former quirkless status." Her expression fell. "That's awful. I had no idea." Something about her genuine distress penetrated his usual detachment. "Your intention wasn't malicious. I'm not offended." When teams formed, Izuku found himself joined by Uraraka, Tokoyami, and surprisingly, Hatsume Mei from the support department, who was eager to showcase her babies alongside his power. "With my support items and your abilities, we'll dominate," she declared, uncomfortably close to his face. "And the companies will notice my brilliant inventions." The cavalry battle proved anticlimactic. When Todoroki's team attempted to freeze them in place, Izuku simply manipulated the molecular structure of the ice, instantly converting it to harmless water vapor. When Bakugo launched an aerial attack, Izuku created a localized gravitational distortion that gently but firmly pushed the explosive student back to his own team. Throughout the event, he carefully calibrated his responses to defend without overwhelming, using just enough power to discourage further attempts without revealing his full capabilities. Their teenaged first without ever being seriously threatened. The tournament portion of the festival generated the most intense public interest. Izuku's first match against Shinso Hitoshi ended before it began. When Shinso attempted to activate his brainwashing quirk, he discovered that Izuku's enhanced mind was completely immune to such manipulation. "Your quirk attempts to establish neural pathway override," Izuku explained, as Shinso stared in shock. "My neural architecture is reinforced against external influence." With no way to affect his opponent, Shinso was easily pushed out of bounds by a gentle but firm telekinetic nudge. His subsequent matches followed a similar pattern. Against Tokoyami, he simply increased the ambient light intensity, weakening Dark Shadow to the point of ineffectiveness. Against Ida, he calculated the exact trajectory of Reciproburst and positioned himself accordingly, rendering the speed advantage moot. In the semifinals, he faced Todoroki. As they took their positions, Izuku decided on a different approach. "Todoroki," he called across the arena. "Use your fire." The dual quirk user frowned. "I told you I've rejected my father's power." "And I told you that's illogical," Izuku countered. "Your power isn't defined by its origin, but by its application." The match began with Todoroki launching a massive ice attack. Izuku didn't dodge or counter, he simply stood his ground, allowing the ice to engulf him completely. When the frozen barrage settled, he remained unmoved at its center, not even shivering despite being encased in ice. "Temperature extremes don't affect me," he stated calmly, the ice around him melting from the ambient heat of his aura. "Try again." Todoroki gritted his teeth and sent another wave larger than the first. Again, Izuku stood immobile, allowing himself to be buried under the glacial assault. Again, he emerged unaffected. "You're limiting yourself unnecessarily," Izuku observed. "At full capacity, you might present an interesting challenge." "Shut up," Todoroki shouted, frost forming on his right side as he overused his ice. "I don't need his power to defeat you." "This isn't about defeating me," Izuku replied, walking forward through the ice as if it were nothing more than a mild inconvenience. "It's about accepting yourself." As Todoroki prepared another attack, Izuku moved, not with his full speed, but fast enough to appear beside Todoroki before he could react. With careful precision, he placed his hand on Todoroki's frosted arm. "Your body temperature is dropping dangerously," he noted clinically. "Without thermal regulation from your left side, you risk severe hypothermia." "I don't care," Todoroki hissed through chattering teeth. "Your mother would," Izuku stated simply. Todoroki's eyes widened in shock. "What did you say?" "Your mother. Would she want you to cripple yourself out of hatred for your father?" Izuku's voice remained even, but something in his eyes had softened. "Does rejecting half of yourself honor her sacrifice?" For a moment, Todoroki stood frozen, not from his quirk, but from the unexpected impact of those words. Then, with a roar of defiance that seemed directed not at Izuku, but at someone far away, flames erupted from his left side, engulfing the arena in a torrent of fire. Izuku stood at the center of the inferno, unburned and unaffected. When the flames subsided, he nodded with something almost like approval. "Now you're actually using your power," he acknowledged. "Unfortunately, this match is still over." With a gentle but irresistible telekinetic push, he sent Todoroki sliding out of bounds. "Midoriya advances to the finals," Present Mike announced over the loudspeakers. But what an incredible display from Todoroki. That fire was hot enough to melt concrete. As they left the arena, Todoroki stopped him. "Why did you push me like that? Why do you care if I use my fire?" Izuku considered the question seriously. "Artificial limitations prevent optimal performance. I find inefficiency irritating." Todoroki studied him for a long moment. "That's not the whole truth." After a pause, Izuku acknowledged, "No, it isn't, but it's the part I understand." The finals matched Izuku against Bakugo, who had fought his way through the bracket with ferocious determination. As they faced each other in the arena, Bakugo's expression was a complex mixture of rage, determination, and something that might have been fear. "I'm going to fucking kill you," Deku snarled, small explosions popping in his palms. "No, you won't," Izuku replied simply. When the match began, Bakugo launched himself forward with his explosive propulsion, leading with his signature right hook. Unlike their previous encounters, Izuku didn't stand still. He moved, matching Bakugo's speed exactly, stepping just outside the range of the explosion. "What the hell?" Bakugo growled, adjusting his trajectory for another attack. Again, Izuku moved precisely, avoiding the blast without countering. This pattern continued for several exchanges, with Izuku evading but never attacking until Bakugo's frustration boiled over. "Fight me for real," he screamed, preparing his ultimate move. "Howitzer impact!" The devastating spiral explosion hurtled toward Izuku, who finally extended one hand. The blast seemed to flow around him, like divided by an invisible barrier of altered space as he manipulated the explosion's molecular structure, rendering it harmless. "Is this what you want, Kachan?" Izuku asked, using the childhood nickname for the first time since his transformation. "To prove yourself against me?" "Don't call me that," Bakugo roared, charging again. "You looked down on me for years, hiding your power, making me think you were worthless." "I was quirkless," Izuku corrected, sidestepping another blast. "The power came later." "Liar!" Bakugo launched a devastating combination attack. "Nobody gets this powerful overnight." "Not overnight," Izuku agreed, finally catching Bakugo's wrist mid-explosion. "It took 7 years of molecular reconstruction, pain beyond imagination, and the loss of most of my emotional capacity." The admission caused Bakugo to falter momentarily. "What the hell are you talking about?" "The price of power," Izuku replied simply. Then, with careful control, he increased the local gravitational field around Bakugo, forcing him to his knees. "This match is over." "Like hell it is!" Bakugo struggled against the invisible force, his determination allowing him to rise to one knee despite the crushing pressure. For a moment, something like respect flickered in Izuku's eyes. "Your willpower is impressive, but futile." With a precise application of force, he increased the gravity just enough to fully immobilize Bakugo without causing injury. "I forfeit," Bakugo spat, defiant even in defeat. "I won't win because you took pity on me." Izuku released the gravitational field immediately. It wasn't pity, it was acknowledgement. As midnight declared Izuku the winner, the stadium erupted in cheers, though there was an undercurrent of unease. The audience had witnessed power beyond what most pro-heroes could display, controlled with precision that suggested even greater capabilities hidden beneath the surface. At the medal ceremony, All Might, fully restored to his muscular form thanks to Izuku's healing sessions, placed the gold medal around his neck. "Young Midoriya," he said quietly, for his ears alone, "impressive as your power is, today your greatest strength was knowing when to hold back." Izuku accepted the medal with a formal nod. "I'm learning." In the aftermath of the sports festival, Izuku found himself the subject of intense media speculation. Footage of his matches was analyzed endlessly by quirk experts, none of whom could definitively categorize his abilities. His father fielded numerous inquiries from military and research organizations, all of which were deflected with practiced ease. At UA, the atmosphere had shifted subtly. Some students regarded him with awe, others with wariness. Even the teachers seemed unsure how to approach his training, as he had clearly mastered skills far beyond their curriculum. When the time came to select hero names and internship placements, Izuku faced an unexpected challenge. "Midoriya," Midnight announced, reviewing his paperwork, "you've received offers from virtually every major hero agency in the country, 2,043 in total, a new record." The class murmured in impressed surprise. "However," she continued, "you've indicated that you wish to decline all offers." "Correct," Izuku confirmed. "Standard hero protocols are insufficient for my training needs." "So what will you do during internship week?" she asked. "I've arranged specialized training with military consultants," he explained, with Principal Nezu's approval. As for his hero name, he had submitted only one option: Sentry. "The Sentry," Midnight considered. "It's straightforward, though a bit severe. Any particular meaning behind it?" "It describes my function," Izuku replied simply. "To stand guard at the boundary between safety and chaos." While his classmates dispersed to their various internships, Izuku reported to a secure facility where his father had arranged for advanced power assessment and control training. For 5 days, he underwent extensive testing, pushing the limits of his abilities under controlled conditions. On the 6th day, however, an alert reached the facility. The hero killer Stain had been spotted in Hosu City, where Ida was interning with the normal hero, Manuel. Without consulting anyone, Izuku teleported directly to Hosu, his enhanced senses immediately scanning the city for signs of disturbance. He detected multiple Nomu, creatures similar to the one he had faced at USJ, attacking different sections of the city. But beneath those obvious threats, he sensed a more focused confrontation in a narrow alleyway. He teleported there immediately, finding Ida pinned to the ground by the hero killer's blade. Native, a pro-hero, lay paralyzed nearby, and Todoroki had just arrived, sending a wave of ice toward the villain. Stain, displaying incredible agility, dodged the ice and prepared to counter when Izuku appeared between them in a flash of golden light. "Midoriya?" Todoroki exclaimed in surprise. "Stand down," Izuku instructed the hero killer calmly. "Further aggression is futile." Stain's bloodshot eyes narrowed as he assessed this new arrival. Another child playing at being a hero? Or perhaps... His expression shifted to one of intense focus. "No, you're different. I sense genuine purpose in you." "Your assessment is irrelevant," Izuku replied. "You've injured my classmates. Surrender immediately." Stain laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Surrender? To test if you're worthy of surviving my purge, hero." The hero killer moved with shocking speed, his blade aiming directly for Izuku's throat. The sword struck with precision and shattered against Izuku's unbreakable skin. Stain stared in disbelief at the broken weapon. "What?" Before he could finish, Izuku grasped his wrist, applying just enough pressure to immobilize without breaking bones. "Your campaign against false heroes has a logical foundation," Izuku stated, surprising everyone present. "Society has commercialized heroism, transforming a noble calling into a celebrity profession." "Midoriya," Ida gasped, struggling against this. "What are you saying?" "However," Izuku continued, ignoring the interruption, "your methodology is flawed. Executing individuals for failing to meet subjective ideological standards is not justice, but terrorism." For a moment, something dark flickered in Izuku's eyes, a glimpse of the void pushing at the boundaries of his control. "I could eliminate you with a thought," he said, his voice deepening slightly. "Reduce you to your component atoms. It would be... simple." "Midoriya, don't!" Todoroki called, seeing the dangerous shift in his demeanor. With visible effort, Izuku suppressed the darkness, his eyes returning to their normal green. "But that's not what heroes do." With precise application of force, he rendered Stain unconscious, then systematically secured him with capture tape. Ida, Todoroki, he addressed his classmates, are your injuries severe? I'll recover, Ida replied, his expression complicated by shame and relief. Midoriya, how did you know to come here? I monitored news reports of the Hosu incident and calculated your probable location based on your internship placement. He turned to Todoroki. Your fire control has improved. Thanks to you, Todoroki acknowledged, then hesitated. That darkness in your eyes just now, it was like at USJ. Izuku nodded once. The void. A secondary aspect of my power. It emerged briefly, but was contained. As pro-heroes arrived to secure Stain and treat the injured, Izuku received a stern lecture from Manual about unauthorized quirk use and vigilantism. He accepted the criticism without comment, though it was clear the normal rules governing quirk usage were increasingly irrelevant to his capabilities. Later, when the incident had been resolved and the official story crafted to credit Endeavor with Stain's capture, Izuku found himself alone with Ida. I went there for revenge, Ida admitted, his usual formality abandoned in the face of his shame. Not to save native or uphold justice, but to avenge my brother. Understandable, Izuku replied. Family bonds generate strong emotional responses, but not heroic ones, Ida insisted. I failed as a hero today. You failed a test, Izuku corrected. Growth requires failure. Learn from it. Something in his matter-of-fact acceptance seemed to reach Ida more effectively than emotional reassurance might have. The class representative straightened his shoulders and nodded firmly. I will. Thank you, Midoriya-kun. As they prepared to return to UA, Izuku received an unexpected call from All Might. Young Midoriya, the hero's voice sounded strained even through the phone. I need to speak with you urgently. Alone. The meeting took place on UA's roof, away from prying eyes or listening devices. All Might, in his true form, paced anxiously as he explained the nature of his quirk. One for all, a power transferred from user to user, accumulating strength with each generation. I've been searching for a successor, he explained, his sunken eyes serious. Someone worthy to inherit this quirk and continue as the symbol of peace when I can no longer serve. Logical, Izuku acknowledged. Your injury, even with my partial healing, limits your capability. Initially, I considered you, All Might admitted. Your actions during the entrance exam showed true heroic spirit, risking yourself to save another without hesitation. But you reconsidered after learning of my existing power, Izuku surmised. Precisely. You have no need for one for all. Your abilities already exceed what it could offer. All Might sighed heavily. However, I've begun to wonder if perhaps the power isn't what you need from it. Clarify. One for all isn't just strength, young Midoriya. It's a connection to those who came before, their spirits, their ideals, their humanity. All Might placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. Something your impressive power seems to have cost you. Izuku considered this thoughtfully. You believe one for all might counteract my emotional detachment? It's possible, All Might nodded. The vestiges of previous users sometimes communicate with the current holder. Their influence might rebalance what was lost in your transformation. For a moment, Izuku was silent, processing this information with his enhanced mind. Finally, he shook his head. The interaction between one for all and my existing powers is unpredictable, he concluded. The risk of destabilization outweighs potential benefits. All Might seemed both disappointed and relieved. I suspected you might say that. Your analytical mind is nothing if not thorough. Additionally, Izuku continued, I believe I've identified a more suitable candidate within Class 1A. Oh? All Might raised an eyebrow. Mirio Tagata from Class 3B would be my first recommendation based on capability and character assessment. However, if you prefer a younger candidate with more development time, Uraraka Ochako demonstrates the optimal combination of combat potential and genuine heroic spirit. All Might blinked in surprise. Young Uraraka I hadn't considered. Her gravity manipulation quirk has substantial untapped potential, Izuku explained. Combined with One for All's strength enhancement, she could achieve gravitational control on a cosmic scale. More importantly, she consistently prioritizes others' welfare above personal gain or glory. You've given this considerable thought, All Might observed, studying Izuku with new interest. Tactical assessment is automatic, Izuku replied with a slight shrug. But in this case, I also have personal confidence in her character. All Might's signature smile emerged. You consider her a friend. Izuku hesitated, then nodded once. Yes, I believe that term is accurate. Then I'll take your recommendation under serious consideration, All Might promised. In the meantime, I hope you'll continue our healing sessions. They've been remarkably effective. Of course, Izuku agreed. Your continued functionality is strategically valuable to society. As All Might turned to leave, Izuku added, almost as an afterthought, and I find our conversations informative. The symbol of peace laughed warmly. Coming from you, young Midoriya, that's practically a declaration of affection. The final exams approached rapidly. For the written portion, Izuku's enhanced mind easily processed and recalled the necessary information, resulting in a perfect score. The practical exam, however, presented a more interesting challenge. You'll be working in pairs against the teaching staff, Aizawa explained to the assembled class. Your objective is either to escape through the exit gate or to capture your opponent using these special handcuffs. When the pairings were announced, Izuku found himself matched with Bakugo against All Might himself. This is bullshit, Bakugo muttered as they reviewed the exam area map. I don't need your help to pass. Against normal opponents, perhaps, Izuku conceded. Against All Might, your assessment is inaccurate. I'll kill him and then I'll kill you, Bakugo growled, though the threat lacked his usual conviction. When their exam began, All Might wasted no time, appearing before them with a devastating punch that created a shockwave powerful enough to shatter concrete. Come, young heroes, he boomed, his smile somehow more menacing than reassuring. Show me your resolve. Bakugo immediately launched himself forward with an explosive blast, ignoring Izuku's warning. All Might caught him mid-air with casual ease and slammed him into the ground with enough force to crater the pavement. Predictable, young Bakugo, All Might declared. Anger makes you readable. Izuku assessed the situation quickly. All Might was wearing weighted restraints and clearly holding back, but still operating at a level that would overwhelm Bakugo. Direct confrontation would be inefficient. Bakugo, he called, helping his semi-conscious partner to his feet. We need to retreat and formulate a strategy. Fuck that. Bakugo wheezed, struggling to stand. I don't retreat. All Might appeared before them again, moving with incredible speed despite his weights. No time for planning, heroes. Villains don't wait politely. His next attack aimed directly at Izuku, who caught the punch with one hand, the collision generating a shockwave that shattered windows for blocks around. Impressive, young Midoriya! All Might grinned. But can you protect your partner and fight me simultaneously? With his free hand, All Might reached for Bakugo, only to find Izuku suddenly between them, moving faster than even All Might could track. Yes, Izuku stated simply, then with careful restraint pushed All Might back several meters. Bakugo, he said without taking his eyes off All Might, the optimal strategy is escape, not combat. I'll engage All Might while you proceed to the gate. Like hell, Bakugo snarled, finally regaining his footing. I'm not running away while you take all the glory. This isn't about glory, Izuku replied, his patience thinning. It's about passing the exam through the most efficient means. All Might charged again, this time targeting the ground beneath them, creating a fissure that separated the two students. As Bakugo struggled to maintain balance, All Might moved to capture him. In an instant, Izuku teleported to Bakugo's side, grabbed him, and teleported them both to a rooftop several blocks away. What the fuck? Bakugo pushed away angrily. I didn't ask for your help. Your preference is noted and irrelevant, Izuku replied. Listen carefully. All Might's objective is to prevent our escape or capture us both. Really, his weighted restraints limit his movement, but not his strength or battle experience. So what? I can take him. Evidence suggests otherwise, Izuku countered bluntly. However, we can use his expectations against him. Despite his reluctance, Bakugo listened as Izuku outlined a plan that, while simple, played to both their strengths. When All Might found them again, they were ready. There you are, the hero boomed, landing on the rooftop with enough force to crack the concrete. Running only delays the inevitable. Bakugo stepped forward, palms crackling with explosions. Who's running, old man? I'm gonna take you down. He launched himself at All Might with his maximum explosive propulsion, creating a smokescreen of debris and flame. All Might easily dodged the frontal assault, positioning himself to counter, exactly as Izuku had predicted. From the smoke, Bakugo fired his AP shot, a concentrated explosion with penetrating power, not at All Might directly, but at the weighted braces on his arms. The precision blast weakened the restraints just enough for what came next. As All Might moved to capture Bakugo, Izuku teleported directly behind him, handcuffs ready. The symbol of peace sensed the approach and turned with remarkable speed, catching Izuku's wrist before he could apply the cuffs. "Clever," All Might acknowledged. "But not clever enough." "Correct assessment," Izuku agreed. "That's why it's a diversion." All Might's eyes widened as he realized Bakugo was no longer in front of him, but racing toward the exit gate, using his explosions for maximum acceleration. "The gate!" All Might turned to pursue, but Izuku held his wrist firmly. "You underestimated our ability to cooperate," Izuku stated, increasing his grip strength for just enough to delay All Might without causing injury. "A tactical error." With a roar of triumph, Bakugo blasted through the exit gate, securing their pass. "Well done, young heroes!" All Might laughed, genuinely pleased despite his defeat. "Excellent teamwork." As they regrouped at the monitoring center, Bakugo refused to acknowledge their successful cooperation, stomping away with his usual scowl. All Might, however, approached Izuku privately. "That was impressive restraint, young Midoriya," he said quietly. "You could have overpowered me directly, but chose the path that allowed your partner to shine." "It was the most efficient solution," Izuku replied, though something in his expression suggested there might be more to his decision. "Perhaps," All Might smiled knowingly, "or perhaps you're learning that true strength sometimes means holding back to lift others up." Izuku didn't confirm or deny this assessment, but as he watched Bakugo receiving praise from their classmates for securing the win, something almost like satisfaction crossed his face. Summer vacation brought a new challenge. The training camp in the Beast's Forest, designed to strengthen quirks and combat skills through intensive exercises. For Izuku, whose powers already exceeded anything the training could enhance, the camp represented a different opportunity. A chance to observe his classmates' growth and perhaps develop the social connections his mother kept encouraging. The bus ride to the campsite was lively, with students chattering excitedly about their expectations. Izuku sat quietly, occasionally responding to Uraraka's enthusiastic questions with short but not unkind answers. When the Pussycats ambushed them, forcing the class to navigate through the forest to reach the camp, most students groaned at the unexpected challenge. Izuku simply assessed the situation, calculated the optimal route, and began walking. "Wait up, Midoriya," Kirishima called. "Shouldn't we stick together?" "That would be tactically sound," Izuku acknowledged, pausing. "Different quirks can address different obstacles more efficiently as a unit." "Exactly," Ida agreed enthusiastically. "As class representative, I suggest we form teams based on complementary abilities." As they organized, Bakugo predictably insisted on charging ahead alone, only to be immediately attacked by one of the forest's earth beasts, creatures created by Pixie Bob's quirk. Before Bakugo could even launch a counterattack, the beast suddenly disintegrated into harmless sand. "What the hell?" He turned to see Izuku standing calmly, one hand extended. "Molecular deconstruction," Izuku explained unnecessarily. "The creatures are simply animated earth. I converted the binding particles to a looser configuration." With this discovery, their journey became considerably easier. Whenever earth beasts appeared, Izuku systematically reduced them to piles of sand, allowing the class to make steady progress through the forest. "This is kind of cheating, isn't it?" Kaminari complained after the 20th beast fell without a fight. "We're supposed to be training our quirks." "I'm using minimal power," Izuku pointed out. "If you prefer, I can allow the creatures to attack first." No, Kaminari backpedaled quickly. "This is fine." Despite Izuku's assistance, the forest still presented natural challenges: terrain, fatigue, and the sheer distance they needed to cover. By the time they reached the camp, most students were exhausted. 4 hours and 16 minutes, Mandalay announced as they arrived. "Not bad, though we expected you to take longer with the beasts." "Blame Midoriya," Sero laughed, clapping Izuku on the shoulder. "He turned your monsters into sandbox material." The training began in earnest the next day, with each student assigned specialized exercises designed to push their quirks to new limits. For Izuku, Aizawa had designed a unique challenge, maintaining precise control over multiple molecular manipulations simultaneously while under stress. Your raw power isn't in question, Aizawa explained as they stood before a complex arrangement of different materials. But heroes need finesse, especially when civilians are involved. The exercise required Izuku to simultaneously alter the molecular structure of 6 different substances: metal, wood, water, stone, fabric, and glass, each in a different specific way, while Aizawa used psychological pressure tactics to distract him. "Your mother is in danger," Aizawa stated flatly as Izuku began the exercise. "What do you do?" "Teleport to her location, assess the threat, neutralize it," Izuku replied without breaking concentration, the materials before him changing shape and composition with precise control. "You can't teleport. Your power is blocked." "Unlikely scenario, but I would contact my father. He maintains a security detail for her protection." Aizawa raised an eyebrow at this revelation but continued. "All Might is defeated. Villains have taken over the city. Civilians are dying." A flicker of darkness passed through Izuku's eyes, and the metal sample briefly liquefied before he regained control. Systematic threat elimination prioritizing civilian evacuation. "The Void wants to kill everyone. You're losing control." This time, all 6 samples trembled as something dark briefly swirled around Izuku's fingers. With visible effort, he suppressed it, restoring perfect control. Containment protocols activated, mental partitioning established, threat isolated. After hours of similar pressure testing, Aizawa finally called a halt. "Your control is impressive," he acknowledged, "but that darkness, the void as you call it, still emerges under sufficient stress." "Yes," Izuku admitted, "it's a persistent issue." "Have you considered that complete suppression might not be the answer?" Aizawa suggested unexpectedly. "Integration rather than compartmentalization?" Izuku looked at him sharply. "The void isn't compatible with heroic operations. Its primary directive is elimination, not protection." "Every aspect of ourselves has value," Aizawa countered. "Even the darkest parts. The key is finding its proper application." Before Izuku could respond, they were interrupted by sounds of excitement from the main training area. The other students had completed their exercises for the day and were preparing for the night's activity. A test of courage through the forest. To everyone's surprise, Izuku participated in the test of courage, paired with Todoroki. As they walked through the darkened forest, Todoroki broke the silence. "You didn't have to join this activity. It's not like anything here could actually scare you." "True," Izuku acknowledged, "but my mother suggested I engage in more social activities with peers." Todoroki almost smiled. "You follow your mother's advice even with your power level?" "Especially with my power level," Izuku replied seriously. "She remains one of the few emotional anchors in my life." Before Todoroki could respond, Izuku suddenly tensed, his enhanced senses detecting something amiss in the forest around them. "Multiple unknown entities approaching," he stated, shifting to combat readiness. Heart rates elevated, adrenal signatures indicate hostile intent. "These aren't students or teachers." "Villains?" Todoroki asked, immediately creating ice along his right side. "Confirmed." Izuku nodded, his eyes glowing slightly as he extended his senses further. Approximately 20 individuals with combat quirks. They've surrounded the perimeter of the training ground. Without hesitation, Izuku opened a communication channel directly to Aizawa, using his molecular manipulation to vibrate air molecules in a precise pattern that carried his voice to his teacher's location. Eraserhead. Villain incursion detected. Multiple hostiles surrounding the forest. Students are scattered and vulnerable. Across the camp, alerts sounded as the pro heroes mobilized. Izuku turned to Todoroki, his expression coldly efficient. "Find other students and establish a defensive position. I'll neutralize the primary threats." "We should stay together," Todoroki argued. "Even you can't be everywhere at once." "Actually, I can," Izuku replied, then vanished in a flash of golden light. Teleporting rapidly across the forest, Izuku assessed the situation with military precision. The villains had deployed a toxic gas quirk to incapacitate students, while combat specialists targeted specific individuals. Most concerning was their apparent objective, the abduction of specific students rather than random violence. Izuku's first priority was eliminating the gas. Teleporting to its source, he found a villain with a mask-like face releasing purple mist from his body. Without hesitation, Izuku altered the molecular structure of the gas, rendering it inert, then neutralized the villain with a precise strike to a nerve cluster. Next, he located Mandalay, teleporting directly to her position. "The villains are targeting Bakugo and potentially others," he reported. "I'll extract the vulnerable students and establish a defensive perimeter." "Wait, Midoriya," Mandalay called, but he had already vanished. Systematically, Izuku teleported to each isolated student group, neutralizing nearby threats and teleporting injured students back to the main lodge, where Vlad King had established a medical station. Within minutes, he had secured most of his classmates. The situation complicated when he detected Bakugo and Todoroki engaged with a villain whose quirk allowed him to create and control blue flames. The villain, who he would later learn was named Dabi, was keeping them at bay with walls of fire that even Todoroki's ice couldn't fully counter. Izuku teleported directly into the center of the inferno, the flames parting around his protected form. "Midoriya," Todoroki called, relief evident in his voice. "Step away from my classmates," Izuku addressed Dabi calmly, golden energy beginning to swirl around his hands. Dabi's scarred face twisted into a smile. "So, you're the famous Sentry. Our intelligence said you'd be the biggest obstacle." He raised his hands, blue flames intensifying. "Let's see how fireproof you really are." The villain unleashed a concentrated blast of blue fire hot enough to melt steel. Izuku didn't move or attempt to block. He simply stood as the flames washed over him without effect. "Temperature extremes don't affect me," he stated, echoing his words to Todoroki during their sports festival match. "Your quirk is ineffective." Before Dabi could respond, a voice called from the trees. "Dabi, we've got what we came for. Retreat!" Izuku's enhanced hearing caught the words clearly, and he immediately extended his senses, scanning the entire forest. What he detected sent a cold spike of alarm through even his controlled mind. Bakugo was being surrounded by multiple villains while a warp gate began to form. "They're taking Bakugo," he informed Todoroki, then teleported directly to the extraction point. He arrived to find Bakugo fighting fiercely against Compress, Twice, and several other villains as the misty warp gate expanded behind them. "Let him go," Izuku demanded, golden energy now fully surrounding his body. "Oh my, it's the golden boy," Twice exclaimed. "We're in trouble now. We can take him." Compress performed an elaborate bow. "I'm afraid we have our orders. The explosive lad comes with us." Izuku didn't waste time with further dialogue. Moving faster than the human eye could track, he disabled Twice with a precise strike, then turned toward Compress. Before he could reach him, however, a massive villain composed of dark muscle fiber intercepted, delivering a punch that would have shattered concrete. Izuku caught the fist easily, recognizing the creature as another Nomu, more advanced than the one from USJ, but following the same basic design principles. "You're wasting my time," Izuku stated coldly, then systematically began deconstructing the Nomu molecule by molecule, just as he had at USJ. As the creature disintegrated, Izuku turned to find Compress pressing a marble to his chest. Bakugo compressed into a tiny sphere. "Too late, hero," the villain taunted, leaping backward toward the warp gate. Something dark flashed in Izuku's eyes. The air around him seemed to distort as shadows began extending from his body. "No," he said, his voice deepening to an unnatural register. "You've miscalculated." Dark tendrils shot from his body with impossible speed, wrapping around Compress before he could reach the gate. The villain screamed as the shadows tightened, threatening to crush him. "Give him back," the void demanded, Izuku's eyes now completely black. "Midoriya, stop!" Todoroki's voice called as he arrived at the scene. "You'll kill him." The darkness hesitated, allowing Compress just enough left leverage to release a second marble, a decoy, while passing the real Bakugo to Dabi, who had appeared through the gate. "Sorry, hero," Dabi smirked, stepping back into the portal with Bakugo's marble. "Maybe next time." As the gate began to close, Izuku's darkness surged, but it was too late. The portal vanished, taking Bakugo with it. For a moment, the forest fell silent. The dark tendrils receded slowly back into Izuku's body as his eyes gradually returned to normal. He stood motionless, processing what had just happened. "They took him," Todoroki stated unnecessarily, approaching cautiously. "Yes," Izuku acknowledged, his voice back to its usual controlled tone. "I failed to secure Bakugo." When the pro-heroes arrived moments later, they found Izuku methodically securing the remaining villains with capture tape, his expression betraying nothing of the darkness that had briefly emerged. Midoriya, Aizawa approached, taking in the scene. Report. Villain team successfully abducted Bakugo, Izuku stated clinically. Multiple hostiles neutralized, but key operatives escaped via warp gate. The void emerged briefly but was contained before causing casualties. Aizawa's eyes narrowed at this last detail. We'll discuss that later. For now, help with the injured students. As emergency services arrived and the wounded were treated, Izuku found himself standing apart from the others, analyzing his failure with ruthless objectivity. He had allowed the villains to dictate the terms of engagement, divided his attention too broadly, and underestimated their strategic capabilities. Most concerning was the Void's emergence. The darkness had nearly killed Compress, would have if Todoroki hadn't intervened. The containment protocols his father had established were proving increasingly insufficient under combat stress. "It's not your fault," Uraraka said softly, approaching him with her arm in a sling. "You saved most of us. Without you, things would have been much worse." "Factually inaccurate," Izuku replied. "My intervention was insufficiently comprehensive. Bakugo's abduction represents a tactical failure." "You can't be everywhere at once," she insisted. "Actually, I theoretically could," he corrected, "with sufficient teleportation speed and predictive modeling." Despite his detachment, something in Uraraka's concerned expression reached him. After a moment, he added, "But your attempt at emotional support is appreciated." When the students were finally transported back to UA, a strategy meeting was immediately convened among the faculty. Though technically excluded as a student, Izuku was invited due to his unique capabilities and his direct involvement in the incident. The villains specifically targeted young Bakugo, Principal Nezu summarized. Their planning and execution suggests inside information and strategic sophistication far beyond common criminals. Their leader is likely Shigaraki Tamura, Izuku added, the same villain from USJ. Intelligence suggests connection to a larger organization headed by an individual codenamed All for One. The faculty looked at him in surprise. "How do you know that name?" All Might asked sharply. "My father's security clearance provides access to classified threat assessments," Izuku explained. All for One is designated Threat Level Alpha, a quirk user capable of stealing and bestowing quirks, active for over a century. That information is restricted to the highest levels of hero society, Nezu noted, studying Izuku with new intensity. "Yes," Izuku acknowledged without elaboration. After a tense silence, Aizawa redirected the conversation. "Regardless of how Midoriya obtained this information, it aligns with what we know. The question now is how to recover Bakugo before they can either harm him or, worse, turn him." "I can locate him," Izuku stated. "During previous encounters, I obtained Bakugo's unique molecular signature. With sufficient concentration, I can track him anywhere within a 100-kilometer radius." "That would be incredibly useful," Midnight admitted, "but we can't send students on a rescue mission. This is a job for the pros." "With respect," Izuku countered, "conventional pro-heroes lack the necessary capabilities for this operation. The villains will be expecting a rescue attempt and will have prepared countermeasures for standard quirks." "And you believe your powers would circumvent these countermeasures?" Vlad King asked skeptically. "Yes," Izuku replied simply. "My abilities operate on fundamental laws of physics rather than quirk mechanics. Standard anti-quirk measures are ineffective." All Might, in his true form for this private meeting, leaned forward. "Young Midoriya, your confidence is not unfounded, but even you have limitations. All for One is beyond anything you've encountered." "Your assessment is based on incomplete information," Izuku stated. "My upper power limits remain classified." The implications of this statement hung heavily in the room. After lengthy debate, a compromise was reached. Izuku would assist with locating Bakugo, but the actual rescue would be conducted by a team of pro-heroes led by All Might himself. Izuku accepted these terms, though his expression suggested he considered the arrangement inefficient. That evening, as he prepared to begin the tracking process, he received an unexpected call from his father. "The UA administration has informed me of the situation," Hisashi stated without preamble. "The void emerged during combat." "Briefly," Izuku confirmed. "Containment protocols functioned, but with diminishing effectiveness." As expected, his father's voice betrayed no surprise. The integration timeline is accelerating. Integration? Izuku questioned, recalling Aizawa's similar suggestion. The void isn't merely a psychological manifestation, Hisashi explained. It's a quantum entanglement effect, a necessary counterbalance to your primary powers. Complete suppression was never the long-term solution. You never informed me of this, Izuku noted, a rare note of accusation in his voice. You weren't ready, his father replied simply. The Military Oversight Committee feared premature integration would result in personality destabilization. However, recent data suggests force suppression now poses the greater risk. What does integration entail? Izuku asked, already calculating potential outcomes. Controlled synthesis rather than compartmentalization, Hisashi answered. The darkness becomes a tool rather than an enemy. I'm sending detailed protocols to your secure terminal. After the call ended, Izuku reviewed the integration procedures with his enhanced mind, absorbing the complex psychological and quantum mechanical principles involved. The process would be neither simple nor painless, but the logic was sound. Before he could begin implementing the protocols, however, he received another call, this one from Todoroki. Midoriya, his classmate's voice was uncharacteristically urgent. Yaoyorozu created a tracker during the villain attack. Yohiztida, we can locate the League's hideout. This information should be conveyed to the pro-heroes immediately, Izuku replied. We tried, Todoroki explained. They're keeping us isolated until the situation is resolved, but Kirishima is planning to rescue Bakugo ourselves tonight. He's asking for your help. Izuku considered the implications. Unauthorized student intervention would violate numerous regulations and potentially interfere with the official rescue operation. Logically, he should refuse. I'll meet you at the designated coordinates, he said instead. Be prepared for immediate extraction once Bakugo is secured. The unofficial rescue team, consisting of Izuku, Todoroki, Kirishima, Yaoyorozu, and Ida, who had joined to keep them from being reckless rather than to participate, gathered at an abandoned warehouse near the tracking signal's location. This is highly irregular and violates numerous school regulations, Ida protested, though his expression suggested he understood their motivation. Noted, Izuku replied. Your concerns are valid but superseded by tactical necessity. The official response timeline creates an unacceptable risk window. In normal language, we can't wait for the pros, Kirishima translated, punching his hardened fists together. Bakugo needs us now. Yaoyorozu, using her creation quirk, produced specialized equipment for each team member, communication devices, basic armor, and non-lethal restraints. For Izuku, she hesitantly offered a simple domino mask. I doubt this is necessary given your capabilities, she acknowledged, but maintaining some semblance of protocol seemed appropriate. Izuku accepted the mask without comment, appreciating the symbolic gesture if not its practical value. The plan is simple, he outlined as they prepared. I'll teleport us to the location, confirm Bakugo's presence through molecular scanning, then create a targeted extraction window. Kirishima will make initial contact as Bakugo is most likely to respond positively to him. Todoroki and Yaoyorozu will provide defensive coverage while Ida stands ready for secondary evacuation if needed. And if we encounter serious resistance? Todoroki asked, clearly thinking of the blue-flamed villain from the forest. I'll neutralize any threats, Izuku stated. Non-lethally, he added, seeing Ida's expression. When they arrived at the coordinates, they found a nondescript bar in a rundown neighborhood, an unlikely headquarters for a sophisticated villain organization. Stay here, Izuku instructed, then vanished, teleporting inside to perform reconnaissance. The interior was dimly lit and seemingly abandoned, though Izuku's enhanced senses detected recent occupation. Molecular traces confirmed Bakugo had been present, along with multiple individuals matching the chemical signatures of the League's known members. He teleported back to his teammates. They've relocated, but recently, within the last hour, the molecular trail is still active. Can you follow it? Kirishima asked urgently. Yes, Izuku confirmed, expanding his sensory field to trace the distinctive patterns. They've moved to a secondary location approximately 3 kilometers northeast, a warehouse complex. Before they could proceed, however, their communication devices activated with an emergency alert. Across the city, pro-heroes were mobilizing in a coordinated operation targeting multiple League of Villains hideouts simultaneously. The official rescue has begun, Yaoyorozu observed. Perhaps we should withdraw and let the professionals handle it. Negative, Izuku countered, his expression hardening. The pro-heroes are targeting known locations. My tracking indicates Bakugo has been moved to a site not on their target list. Then we're his only chance, Kirishima declared. Let's go. Izuku teleported the team to the warehouse district, materializing on a rooftop overlooking a cluster of abandoned buildings. His enhanced vision penetrated the structures, identifying heat signatures and molecular patterns. There, he indicated a central warehouse, 12 individuals inside. Bakugo is being held in a central room, physically restrained but conscious. 4 high-level threats are present, including Shigaraki and the Warp Gate user. What's the play? Todoroki asked, frost forming along his right arm. I'll teleport directly to Bakugo and extract him immediately, Izuku decided. The rest of you remain here as backup only. If complications arise, be prepared for immediate evacuation. Wait, Kirishima protested. The plan was for me to make contact first. Bakugo might resist if you just grab him. Your concern is valid, but secondary to extraction speed, Izuku replied. Time window is limited. Before they could argue further, the situation changed dramatically. A massive explosion rocked the warehouse district as All Might arrived with devastating force, crashing through the roof of a building 2 blocks away. That's not the right location, Izuku observed. Their intelligence is faulty. Moments later, multiple pro-heroes converged on the area, creating a perimeter around the buildings. Among them, Izuku recognized Endeavor, Best Jeanist, Gang Orca, and several others, an elite strike force deployed for maximum effectiveness. The pros are here in force, Ida noted with relief. We should withdraw and let them handle. He was interrupted by another explosion, this one from the warehouse Izuku had identified. The roof burst outward as a figure launched into the sky, Bakugo using his explosions to propel himself away from his captors. He's escaping on his own, Kirishima exclaimed, and making himself a target, Izuku added, already calculating trajectories. Multiple villains are pursuing. Indeed, dark portals were opening around Bakugo as he attempted to maneuver through the air. Hands reached through the mist, trying to grab him mid-flight. I'm extracting him now, Izuku stated, then vanished in a flash of golden light. He reappeared directly beside Bakugo in mid-air, catching his classmate's arm just as a portal opened before them. Deku! Bakugo exclaimed in shock. Hold still, Izuku instructed, then teleported them both back to the rooftop where the others waited. Bakugo! Kirishima cried in relief, rushing forward to embrace his friend. What the hell are you extras doing here? Bakugo demanded, though he didn't push Kirishima away. Rescuing you? Obviously, Todoroki replied dryly. I didn't need your help, Bakugo insisted, though his exhausted state suggested otherwise. Evacuation required, Izuku interrupted, his attention focused on the warehouse. The situation is escalating. Below, chaos had erupted. The pro-heroes had converged on the warehouse, engaging the League of Villains in direct combat. Best Jeanist had captured several villains with his fiber manipulation, while Endeavor unleashed massive flames against defensive barriers. Then, everything changed. A new presence emerged from within the warehouse, a tall figure in a dark suit wearing a distinctive mask over his face. Even from a distance, Izuku could sense the immense power radiating from this individual. All for one, he identified immediately, his voice uncharacteristically tense. With a casual gesture, the masked villain unleashed a shockwave that sent pro-heroes flying in all directions. Best Jeanist crumpled, his internal organs apparently compressed by some invisible force. Endeavor's flames were neutralized instantly. We need to leave immediately, Izuku stated, turning to his teammates. This opponent exceeds safety parameters for student engagement. For once, no one argued. Izuku prepared to teleport the entire group back to a safe distance when All Might arrived, crashing into All for One with enough force to create a crater in the ground. All Might! The masked villain's voice carried across the battlefield. Finally, we meet again. It's over, All for One. All Might declared, his signature smile nowhere to be seen. Your league is finished. Oh, I think not. All for One replied calmly, then with frightening speed unleashed a combinatorial quirk attack that sent All Might flying backward through several buildings. As the two titans clashed, the very air seemed to vibrate with the force of their battle. Windows shattered for blocks around, and debris rained from collapsing structures. "This is beyond anything I've ever seen," Todoroki murmured, watching the fight with wide eyes. "All Might's holding back," Izuku observed clinically. "He's concerned about collateral damage." "Can't you help him?" Yaoyorozu asked. "Your power would destabilize an already chaotic situation," Izuku finished. "The priority is civilian evacuation." With precise coordination, he directed the team to assist in clearing the area, using his teleportation to remove trapped civilians from damaged buildings, while the others guided people away from the combat zone. Throughout this process, he kept one part of his enhanced mind focused on the battle between All Might and All for One. The fight was devastating both in scale and intensity. All for One utilized dozens of quirks in rapid succession: strength enhancement, air cannons, impact nullification, and others Izuku couldn't immediately classify. All Might countered with pure physical prowess, each punch generating shockwaves visible to the naked eye. As Izuku teleported a family from a collapsing apartment building, he noticed something concerning. All Might was weakening. The symbol of peace's movements were becoming fractionally slower, his attacks less devastating. The partial healing Izuku had provided was helping him maintain his muscular form longer than before, but the strain of all-out combat was taking its toll. Midway through the battle, All for One paused, his masked face turning directly toward Izuku despite the distance between them. "Interesting," the villain's voice somehow carried clearly. "I sense something unusual about you, boy. Something, not quirk-based." A chill ran through Izuku as he realized All for One could somehow detect his true nature. Before he could respond, the villain had returned his attention to All Might, who took advantage of the momentary distraction to land a devastating smash to his opponent's mask, cracking it partially. The battle intensified, with All Might drawing on his deepest reserves. Just when it seemed the symbol of peace might be faltering, he unleashed a final, desperate attack. A United States of smash that created a cyclonic impact visible from miles away. When the dust settled, All for One lay defeated in a massive crater, his mask completely shattered to reveal a horribly disfigured face. All Might stood victorious, but something was wrong. His muscular form flickered, then collapsed entirely, revealing his true emaciated state to the public for the first time. Cameras broadcast the moment worldwide, the symbol of peace reduced to a skeletal shadow of himself. "I am still here," All Might declared defiantly, raising one fist toward the sky. As pro-heroes moved in to secure All for One and medical teams rushed to treat the injured, Izuku teleported directly to All Might's side. "Your condition is critical," he stated, quickly assessing the hero's deteriorated state. "The strain has reversed much of the healing I provided." "It was worth it, young Midoriya," All Might coughed, blood trickling from his mouth. "All for One is defeated. That's what matters." Izuku placed his hand on All Might's chest, golden energy flowing into the hero's broken body. "I can stabilize you temporarily, but the damage is extensive. You'll need comprehensive treatment." All Might nodded weakly. Mahaima's the symbol of peace is over. Now it falls to the next generation. As medical teams arrived to transport All Might to emergency care, Izuku rejoined his classmates. Bakugo, watching the scene with uncharacteristic silence, finally spoke. "He sacrificed everything to save me," he said quietly, his usual aggression absent. "Why?" "Because that's what heroes do," Kirishima answered simply. Bakugo turned to Izuku, his expression complex. "And you idiots came too. Even you, Deku." "Yes," Izuku acknowledged. "Why? After everything, why would you risk your neck for me?" Izuku considered the question with unusual care. "Tactical necessity," he began, then paused. "And because despite our history, you're someone worth saving. It wasn't quite friendship, not yet, but it was something." In the days following what the media dubbed the Camino Ward incident, society struggled to adjust to a new reality, a world without All Might as the symbol of peace. Crime rates rose immediately, villain organizations grew bolder, and a general unease settled over the population. For the students of UA, the repercussions were both institutional and personal. Security measures were intensified to unprecedented levels, and a new dormitory system was implemented to keep students on campus under constant protection. Izuku found these changes logically sound but unnecessary for himself. His powers made him virtually invulnerable to conventional threats, and his ability to teleport meant physical barriers were largely irrelevant. Nevertheless, he complied with the new protocols without complaint, understanding their importance for his classmates' safety. The official investigation into the unauthorized rescue operation resulted in formal reprimands for all students involved, though these were delivered with what Izuku recognized as token severity. Privately, several faculty members acknowledged that their intervention had likely saved Bakugo's life. More significantly, Izuku found himself increasingly the subject of attention from both his peers and the public. All for One's comments during the battle had been broadcast widely, raising questions about the true nature of his abilities. Speculation ranged from the plausible and artificially enhanced quirk to the absurd, an alien entity disguised as a human student. His father, contacted by numerous agencies for clarification, maintained the official cover story. Izuku possessed a rare mutation-type quirk that allowed molecular manipulation on an unusually comprehensive scale. The military classified aspects were attributed to potential defense applications rather than their true origin. All Might, recovering in the hospital, requested Izuku's presence a week after the incident. When he arrived, he found the former symbol of peace looking marginally better, though still far from healthy. Young Midoriya, All Might greeted him, gesturing to a chair beside the bed. "Thank you for coming." "Your condition has stabilized," Izuku observed, scanning the hero's internal state with his enhanced perception. "Cellular degradation has slowed, though not reversed." "I've accepted my limitations," All Might smiled faintly. "But that's not why I asked you here. I've made a decision regarding One for All." Izuku nodded, having anticipated this conversation. "You've selected a successor." "Yes," All Might confirmed. "After considerable thought, I've decided to offer it to young Uraraka." Though Izuku's expression remained neutral, something like approval flickered in his eyes. "A logical choice. Her moral foundation is exceptionally strong, and her quirk has synergistic potential with One for All." "Your recommendation carried significant weight," All Might acknowledged. "Though I must admit, I was surprised by your insight into her character. You notice more than you let on." "Tactical assessment includes personality evaluation," Izuku explained, though this didn't fully account for his awareness of Uraraka's qualities. All Might smiled knowingly, but didn't press the point. "There's something else we need to discuss. All for One recognized something unusual about you during our battle, something not quirk-based, as he put it." "Yes," Izuku confirmed. "His sensory abilities are remarkably acute." "What concerns me is not that he noticed, but that he seemed interested," All Might continued. "All for One has existed for over a century by stealing quirks that benefit him. If your power isn't a quirk..." "He cannot take it," Izuku finished. "My abilities are the result of fundamental biological restructuring at the quantum level, not a quirk factor that can be isolated and transferred." "That's somewhat reassuring," All Might nodded. "However, his interest suggests he may have other means of acquiring or replicating power. The Nomu experiments demonstrate his willingness to modify living subjects to create weapons." Izuku considered this soberly. "You believe he might attempt to replicate my transformation process. It's a possibility we can't dismiss," All Might confirmed, "which means your father's research may be a target." "Security protocols are comprehensive," Izuku stated, though a new calculation had begun in his enhanced mind, a risk assessment he hadn't previously considered. As he left the hospital, Izuku contacted his father directly through their secure channel. "All for One has shown interest in my capabilities," he reported without preamble. "Threat assessment indicates potential targeting of primary research." "Already addressed," Hisashi replied, with military efficiency. "All sensitive materials have been relocated to secure facilities. The formula that created you has been compartmentalized across multiple classified archives. No single breach could compromise the entire process." "Logical precautions," Izuku acknowledged. "However, All for One's intelligence network appears more extensive than previously estimated." "Then we'll accelerate the contingency protocols," his father decided, "including your integration training. The Void is currently your greatest vulnerability, and potentially your greatest asset if properly managed." That evening, in the privacy of his dormitory room, Izuku began the integration protocols his father had transmitted. The process was intensely psychological, requiring him to consciously engage with the darker aspects of his consciousness rather than suppressing them. The void, he discovered, wasn't simply a manifestation of negative emotion. It was a quantum entanglement effect, a necessary counterbalance to his reality warping abilities. Complete suppression was not only impossible but potentially dangerous, creating instability in his power matrix. As he carefully lowered the mental barriers he had maintained for years, he felt the darkness responding, not with the violent surge he had feared, but with a strange sense of recognition. The void was part of him, had always been part of him. It was the accumulated rage of being told he could never be a hero, the pain of his transformation, the cold calculation necessary for precise molecular control. Integration wouldn't happen overnight. It would be a gradual process requiring constant awareness and adjustment. But for the first time since his transformation, Izuku felt a strange sense of potential wholeness, a path toward becoming not just a more effective hero, but perhaps a more complete person. As dawn broke, he emerged from his meditative state to find a message on his phone, a group text to several classmates from Kirishima, suggesting they visit All Might in the hospital together. Among the recipients were Uraraka, Todoroki, Ida, and surprisingly, Bakugo. After a moment's consideration, Izuku typed a simple response: "I'll be there." It wasn't quite friendship, not fully, but it was something he was beginning to recognize as valuable, not just tactically, but personally. And as the sun rose on a world changed by the fall of All Might and the rise of new threats, Izuku Midoriya, the sentry, the golden guardian at the boundary between safety and chaos, prepared to face whatever came next, not just with his overwhelming power, but perhaps with something more human as well. The integration had begun. The provisional license exam represented a crucial milestone in hero training, a gateway from classroom theory to practical fieldwork. For Izuku Midoriya, however, it was merely a formality, a necessary certification process to legitimize abilities that already transcended professional standards. As Class 1A gathered at the National Dogoba Arena, Aizawa delivered his final instructions with characteristic bluntness. Don't embarrass yourselves, or UA, pass or fail on your own merits. The exam structure is straightforward. Mera, the sleep hero, explained to the assembled students. First phase, eliminate competitors by targeting their body-mounted sensors. Only the first 100 examinees advance. Second phase, rescue operations in a simulated disaster zone. Izuku absorbed this information while subtly scanning the arena and competitors, his enhanced mind-mapping terrain features, calculating line-of-sight advantages, and assessing the quirks of various examinees based on observable physical adaptations. Stay together initially, Ida suggested as they entered the arena, until we assess the competitive environment. Izuku shook his head slightly. Inefficient. Multiple schools will target UA students due to our media exposure. Group formation creates an obvious target. Before anyone could respond, the exam began, and as predicted, nearly every competitor immediately converged on UA's location. "They're all coming for us," Kaminari exclaimed. As anticipated, Izuku stated calmly. Without apparent effort, he altered the molecular structure of the air around Class 1A, creating a localized pressure differential that deflected the initial barrage of projectiles. "Disperse in pairs," he instructed, his voice carrying a natural authority that hadn't been present months earlier. "Utilize complementary quirk combinations. I'll create periodic defensive perimeters at 5-minute intervals." The class followed his direction without question, recognizing the tactical soundness of his plan. As they separated, Izuku remained momentarily stationary, golden energy shimmering around him. "Aren't you going to move, Midoriya?" Uraraka asked, concern evident in her voice. "Momentarily," he replied. "I'm establishing baseline molecular signatures for our classmates to track their progress and intervene if necessary." "That's not how teammates usually support each other," she noted with a small smile. Something flickered across Izuku's face, a brief expression that might have been amusement. Perhaps not, but it's effective. As the exam progressed, Izuku moved through the arena with calculated efficiency, eliminating competitors through precisely calibrated molecular manipulations, solidifying the air around sensors to make them brittle, altering the density of projectiles to render them harmless, teleporting directly behind opponents to tag their sensors before they registered his presence. During one such encounter, he faced Inasa Yorashi, the wind user who had declined Yue's acceptance. The powerfully built student unleashed a tornado that would have devastated any normal opponent. Izuku simply stood his ground, adjusting air currents at the molecular level to create a perfect stillness around himself while the storm raged mere inches away. "Impressive control," he acknowledged. "Your quirk has significant potential." "And yours is unlike anything I've seen," Inasa replied, eyes widening as Izuku began walking forward through the windstorm as if it were a mild breeze. "What exactly are you?" "A hero in training," Izuku answered simply, then reached through the howling wind to tap Inasa's sensor with perfect precision. After securing his own advancement, Izuku systematically located each of his classmates, providing tactical support where needed. When Bakugo found himself surrounded by multiple opponents, Izuku teleported to his location. "I don't need your help, Deku," Bakugo snarled, explosions crackling from his palms. "Not assistance," Izuku clarified. "Tactical coordination. Your explosion radius is precisely what's needed here." Despite his protest, Bakugo understood the advantage. As Izuku altered the air density around them to contain and amplify Bakugo's explosions, the two former rivals executed a perfect combination attack that eliminated a dozen competitors simultaneously. For a brief moment, something like respect passed between them. When the second phase began, Izuku's approach shifted dramatically. The rescue operation revealed a depth to his capabilities that surprised even those familiar with his power. As Gang Orca and his villains attacked the rescue zone, most examinees struggled to balance civilian evacuation with villain containment. Izuku approached the problem with characteristic efficiency, but displayed something new, an emerging sense of empathy that informed his technical perfection. When he located an injured civilian trapped under rubble, he didn't simply teleport them to safety or disintegrate the debris. Instead, he knelt beside them, his voice modulating to a gentler tone. "You're safe now. I'm going to move this concrete and then stabilize your injuries before transport. You'll feel a slight warmth as I repair the damaged tissue." As golden energy flowed from his hands, not only removing the rubble, but healing the injuries with molecular precision, the civilian actor broke character momentarily in astonishment. "That's incredible," they whispered. "Are you actually healing me?" "Minor cellular optimization," Izuku explained, helping them stand. "Your body will feel improved for approximately 72 hours. When Gang Orca himself attacked, most students retreated, recognizing the power differential. Izuku instead positioned himself between the pro hero and the evacuation zone. "Your hydrokinetic capabilities are substantial," he acknowledged, analyzing Gang Orca's movements. "However, water is simply hydrogen and oxygen with specific molecular bonding, easily adjusted." As Gang Orca unleashed a powerful water blast, Izuku raised one hand, instantly converting the liquid into a harmless vapor that dissipated around him. "Interesting," Gang Orca remarked. "You're not just strong, you understand the fundamental nature of what you're fighting." "Understanding is essential to control," Izuku replied, then demonstrated by altering the humidity around Gang Orca, creating a localized pressure change that temporarily neutralized his hypersonic abilities without causing harm. When the results were announced, Izuku had not only passed but received special commendation for his rescue techniques, particularly his ability to simultaneously manage civilian evacuation, medical treatment, and villain containment without apparent effort. As they prepared to leave, Aizawa approached him privately. "Your performance was technically perfect," he noted, "but I observed something more significant." "Clarify," Izuku requested. "You're developing genuine concern for those you rescue, not just going through the motions. Your interaction with the civilians showed actual empathy." Izuku considered this assessment. "The integration protocols are having unexpected side effects. The void suppression required emotional dampening as a protective measure. As integration progresses, those dampeners are adjusting." "It's not a side effect, Midoriya," Aizawa corrected. "It's you becoming whole." The provisional license provided Izuku with legal authorization to use his powers in public, a technicality that meant little to someone who could teleport anywhere instantaneously or become invisible by bending light at the molecular level. Nevertheless, he respected the system's purpose in maintaining social order. This respect was tested when reports emerged of a new threat, the Shie Hasai Kai, a Yakuza organization led by Kai Chisaki, also known as Overhaul. Intelligence suggested they were developing some form of quirk-destroying weapon, a prospect that drew immediate attention from hero agencies and UA alike. When Sir Night-Eye All Mights requested assistance from UA students for the investigation, Izuku was an obvious choice. His powers made him invaluable for reconnaissance, and his analytical mind could process complex criminal networks with algorithmic precision. What no one anticipated was how personal this mission would become for him. The briefing at Sir Night-Eye's agency was comprehensive. Overhaul had been observed with a small girl named Eri, whose unusual horn and frightened demeanor suggested possible abuse. Limited intelligence indicated she might be central to the quirk-destroying weapons development. Our priority is gathering evidence for a warrant, Night-Eye explained, his serious expression emphasizing the mission's delicate nature. We suspect Eri is being exploited, but without proof, we can't move against the Hasaikai. An inefficient approach, Izuku stated calmly. I can teleport directly to the girl's location, assess her condition, and extract her if necessary. Absolutely not, Night-Eye countered firmly. That would be illegal entry without a warrant, potentially compromising the entire case and endangering the girl further. The legal framework is secondary to her immediate safety, Izuku replied, something subtly changing in his tone. If she's being harmed, delay is unacceptable. The room fell silent at this uncharacteristic challenge to authority. Mirio Togata, Night-Eye's protege, stepped forward with a diplomatic smile. I understand your concern, Midoriya, but Sir's foresight quirk has helped him plan this meticulously. We need to trust the process. Izuku regarded Mirio thoughtfully. Though he hadn't shared this with others, he had privately noted that Mirio would have been his choice for One for All had Uraraka not proven optimal. The third-year student's combination of power, skill, and genuine heroic spirit was exceptional. Very well, he conceded, but I'll maintain molecular monitoring of the compound perimeter. If Eri's biological signatures indicate severe distress, I will intervene regardless of protocol. This compromise satisfied no one entirely but allowed the operation to proceed. The subsequent intelligence gathering proceeded according to plan until a chance encounter changed everything. During a sanctioned patrol near Haseikai territory, Izuku, Mirio, and Uraraka encountered Overhaul and Eri on a public street. The moment was a coincidence that even Night-Eye's foresight hadn't predicted. Izuku's enhanced perception immediately detected Eri's condition: elevated stress hormones, physical injuries carefully hidden beneath her clothing, and most concerningly, peculiar energy signatures emanating from her horn that defied standard classification. That's her, he stated quietly to his teammates. She's been subjected to repeated trauma. Blood analysis indicates multiple extraction sites. Mirio approached carefully, maintaining a friendly demeanor while assessing the situation. When Eri suddenly broke away from Overhaul and ran toward them, clutching Mirio's leg in desperation, the tension escalated instantly. Sorry about that, Overhaul said smoothly, his plague doctor mask concealing his expression. My daughter is rather excitable. Come back now, Eri. The girl trembled violently, her fear palpable even without Izuku's enhanced senses. Something dark stirred within him at the sight, the void responding to perceived injustice. She displays clear indicators of physical and psychological abuse, Izuku stated, golden energy beginning to shimmer around his hands. Release her into our custody immediately. Overhaul's posture shifted subtly. You're overstepping, hero student. Family matters aren't your concern. False familial claim, Izuku countered, taking a step forward. Genetic markers don't indicate direct relation. The situation balanced on a knife's edge until Eri, seeing Overhaul remove his glove, suddenly pulled away from Mirio. I'll go back, she whispered, eyes downcast in defeat. Please don't hurt them. The resignation in her voice struck Izuku in an unexpected way. Despite his emerging empathy, he had maintained a certain emotional distance from most situations, a clinical perspective that allowed objective assessment. But something about this child's willing return to her abuser to protect strangers triggered a response he hadn't anticipated. As Overhaul departed with Eri, Mirio turned to Izuku with concern. Your eyes. They're darkening. Are you all right? With visible effort, Izuku contained the void's emergence. We're going to get her out, he stated, his voice carrying an uncharacteristic edge. Immediately. We need to report this to Sir first, Mirio insisted. We can't just... But Izuku had already placed his hand on Mirio's shoulder, his other reaching for Uraraka. I've already transmitted the encounter data to Night Eye's agency. The operation timeline has been accelerated. Before they could object, he teleported them directly back to the agency, where Night Eye and the other heroes were already mobilizing in response to Izuku's transmitted data. You've forced our hand, Night Eye stated, though his tone lacked real accusation. We're organizing a raid immediately. Her condition is deteriorating, Izuku reported, displaying a holographic molecular scan he'd captured during their brief encounter. Based on cellular degradation patterns, she's being repeatedly deconstructed and reconstructed at the genetic level. The assembled heroes fell silent at this horrific revelation. How is that even possible? Fat Gum asked. Her quirk appears to involve temporal manipulation, Izuku explained. Overhaul is likely using his deconstruction abilities in combination with hers to create the quirk-destroying weapon, bullets that rewind a person's genetic evolution to before quirk development. Night Eye stared at him. You determined all this from a momentary encounter? Molecular analysis is automatic, Izuku replied simply. The evidence is conclusive. With this information, the raid was sanctioned within hours. The hero team assembled outside the Hasaikai compound, prepared for what would likely be a difficult extraction. As they reviewed the final plan, Night Eye pulled Izuku aside. I've used my foresight on this operation, he admitted quietly. What I saw was concerning. Elaborate, Izuku requested. Death, Night Eye replied grimly. I saw Mirio losing his quirk. I saw serious injuries among multiple heroes. And I saw something else, something dark emerging from you that consumed everything in its path. Izuku processed this information silently. Your quirk observes potential futures, not absolute ones. Probability manipulation is possible. My foresight has never been wrong, Night Eye countered. There's always a first time, Izuku stated with finality, then rejoined the group as they prepared to enter. The raid began according to plan, but quickly descended into chaos. The Hasaikai's defenses were more extensive than anticipated, with multiple quirked enforcers and a labyrinthine compound that shifted and reconfigured through the work of a member named Mimic. Izuku moved through the chaos with methodical precision, scanning for Eri's unique signature while neutralizing obstacles. When walls shifted to block their path, he simply teleported through them or altered their molecular structure to create passageways. When enemies attacked, he disabled them with calculated efficiency, careful to use only the necessary force. Then they encountered Overhaul directly, and everything changed. The Yakuza leader had already mortally wounded one hero and was holding Eri as a shield. When he saw the advancing heroes, he did something unexpected. He merged with one of his enforcers, their bodies melding together in a grotesque display of his reconstructive abilities. Fascinating, Izuku observed clinically, analyzing the transformation. Molecular reconstruction on a macro scale, maintaining dual consciousness within a unified physical form. Is now really the time for analysis? Uraraka exclaimed as she dodged a massive concrete spike erupting from the floor. Understanding his ability is key to countering it, Izuku replied, then moved with blinding speed as Overhaul launched another attack. The battle escalated rapidly. Overhaul's combined form possessed tremendous power, and his ability to deconstruct and reconstruct matter made him exceptionally dangerous. When Mirio used his permeation quirk to phase through attacks and reach Eri, it seemed they might succeed, until Overhaul unveiled his weapon. The quirk-destroying bullet struck Mirio directly, and Izuku watched in real time as the molecular structure of his classmate's DNA rewound itself, erasing the genetic markers for his quirk entirely. Despite this devastating loss, Mirio continued fighting quirkless, his body moving purely on trained instinct and heroic determination. This selfless act, continuing to protect Eri despite his sacrifice, triggered something profound in Izuku. Golden light erupted around him, his power surging as he teleported directly to Overhaul. Your molecular manipulation is impressive, he acknowledged, catching the villain's massive reconstructed arm mid-swing, but fundamentally limited. With calculated precision, Izuku began systematically disassembling Overhaul's composite form, separating the fused individuals at the molecular level without harming them. As the villain desperately tried to recombine, Izuku countered each attempt, his understanding of molecular interaction allowing him to predict and prevent the reconstruction. Impossible. Overhaul gasped as his power was systematically neutralized. What are you? Someone who understands the fundamental nature of reality, Izuku replied, then turned his attention to Eri, who cowered nearby. Kneeling beside her, his golden energy still swirling, Izuku softened his expression. You're safe now, Eri. No one will hurt you again. The small girl looked up at him with eyes that had seen too much suffering. He'll come back. He always comes back. Not this time, Izuku assured her gently. I promise. As he carefully examined her condition, his molecular analysis revealed the full extent of the horror she had endured. Countless instances of being deconstructed and reconstructed. Her temporal quirk harvested repeatedly to create the quirk-destroying bullets. Something dark flickered in his eyes, the void responding to this discovery. For a moment, he considered molecularly disassembling Overhaul entirely, erasing him from existence for what he had done to this child. Midoriya. Night Eye's voice cut through his thoughts. The pro hero had been injured during the battle and lay nearby. Your eyes. With effort, Izuku contained the darkness. The void is responding to the situation. It's under control. Turning back to Eri, he carefully placed his hands on her small shoulders, golden energy flowing between them. I'm going to help you, he explained softly. Your quirk involves temporal reversion. I can stabilize it temporarily and begin healing the physical damage. As his molecular manipulation worked on the cellular level, repairing years of abuse and stabilizing her quirk's erratic activation, Izuku made another discovery, one that changed everything. Her quirk doesn't just rewind physical states, he announced to the assembled heroes as they secured the scene. It reverts time itself for specific targets, which means he turned to Mirio, who stood nearby, coming to terms with the loss of his quirk. Theoretically, her ability could restore what was taken from you. Mirio shook his head. The doctors said the effect is permanent. The quirk factor was erased completely. Conventional medicine can't address temporal manipulation, Izuku countered, but I can guide her ability with precision once she's stabilized and recovered. For the first time since losing his quirk, hope flickered in Mirio's eyes. As they prepared to evacuate, Night Eye's condition deteriorated rapidly. The pro hero had been impaled during the battle, his injuries severe beyond conventional treatment. My foresight showed this outcome, he murmured as medical heroes worked frantically to stabilize him. Some futures can't be changed. Izuku approached, golden energy surrounding his hands. Your foresight operates on quantum probability, he stated, and quantum states can be manipulated. With careful precision, he began molecular reconstruction of Night Eye's damaged organs, simultaneously using his enhanced perception to identify and adjust the temporal signatures around the wound. What are you doing? Night Eye asked weakly. Rewriting probability, Izuku replied, his concentration absolute. The future you saw was one potential outcome. I'm shifting the quantum state to favor an alternative. The other heroes watched in amazement as Night Eye's critical injuries began to stabilize under Izuku's care. The pro hero himself stared in disbelief. My foresight has never been wrong before, he whispered. There's always a first time, Izuku repeated his earlier statement, a hint of something almost like satisfaction in his voice. In the aftermath of the Hasaikai raid, Izuku's reputation underwent a significant shift. His powers had been known to be formidable, but the precision with which he had dismantled Overhaul's operation, rescued Eri, and saved Night Eye from a prophesied death elevated him to a new status among both heroes and the public. Eri was placed in UA's care, her condition requiring specialized attention that only Izuku and Recovery Girl could provide. During her recovery, Izuku visited daily, using his molecular manipulation to help stabilize her quirk while teaching her control techniques. Your ability isn't dangerous inherently, he explained during one session, golden energy flowing between them as he guided her through an exercise. It's simply responding to your emotional state. With proper regulation, you can direct it consciously. But what if I hurt someone again? She asked, the trauma of her past still evident in her hesitant voice. I'm monitoring your molecular output continuously, Izuku assured her. If your quirk activates unexpectedly, I can immediately counterbalance it. This consistent support, combined with the care she received from other UA students and faculty, gradually helped Eri emerge from her shell. Though recovery would be a long process, her improvement was steady and measurable. Meanwhile, true to his word, Izuku worked methodically on a solution for Mirio's lost quirk. After weeks of careful study, combining his understanding of molecular structures with analysis of Eri's temporal ability, he developed a theoretical approach. The quirk-destroying bullet rewound your DNA to a pre-quirk state, he explained to Mirio in Recovery Girl's office. Conventional medicine can't reverse this because it's not damage but a fundamental reversion. However, by precisely guiding Eri's rewind ability with my molecular manipulation, we can target only the specific genetic sequences that were affected. You can really do that? Mirio asked, hope cautiously entering his voice. The probability of success is approximately 87.4%, Izuku confirmed. Acceptable odds. With careful preparation and Eri's consent, they attempted the procedure. Izuku acted as both guide and safety mechanism, using his powers to direct Eri's rewind specifically to Mirio's quirk factor while preventing any unintended effects. Golden light surrounded all three as the procedure progressed, Izuku's expression one of intense concentration as he manipulated molecular structures with unprecedented precision. After several minutes, he stepped back. Attempt activation, he instructed Mirio. With a deep breath, Mirio focused and his hand phased through the examination table. It worked, he exclaimed, joy radiating from him as he activated his permeation quirk fully, phasing through the floor and back up again in celebration. Recovery Girl examined him with amazement. It's not just restored, his quirk factor appears stronger than before. How is that possible? The temporal reversion included his accumulated experience and training, Izuku explained. Essentially, his body remembers the years of development while the genetic structure has been revitalized to an optimal state. News of this achievement, restoring a permanently destroyed quirk, something previously thought impossible, spread quickly through hero circles, though UA managed to keep the details from the general public to protect Eri from unwanted attention. For Izuku, however, the most significant development wasn't external recognition but an internal one. Throughout the Hasaikai operation and its aftermath, he had experienced increasingly frequent instances of emotional response, genuine concern for Eri, satisfaction at Mirio's restored quirk, and a deeper connection to his classmates. The integration is progressing, he noted during one of his regular assessments with Aizawa. The emotional dampening is receding without compromising operational efficiency. And the void? Aizawa questioned, his assessment sharper than most realized. Still present, Izuku acknowledged, but increasingly contextual rather than random. It responds to perceived injustice or threats to those I'm responsible for protecting. Aizawa nodded thoughtfully. It's becoming a directed force rather than a chaotic one. That's progress. As the school year progressed, this evolution continued to manifest in unexpected ways. When Izuku was assigned to a remedial course for students who had caused trouble during their provisional license exams, an administrative technicality rather than a reflection of his performance, he found himself partnered with Bakugo, Todoroki, and Inasa Yoarashi from Shiketsu High. Their task seemed simple: conduct a safety demonstration for troublesome elementary school children to improve their public image and communication skills. For students like Bakugo, with his explosive temper, or Todoroki, with his reserved demeanor, this presented a genuine challenge. For Izuku, the assignment initially seemed irrelevant to his development as a hero. Yet, as they prepared for the demonstration, he found himself approaching it with unexpected thoroughness. The children's psychological profiles indicate attention deficits and behavioral regulation issues, he explained to his teammates as they planned their presentation. Conventional heroics demonstrations will be insufficient to engage them effectively. So what do you suggest, Mr. Perfect? Bakugo growled, clearly uncomfortable with the assignment. Experiential learning through guided participation, Izuku replied. Rather than showing them our quirks, we involve them directly in simulated rescue operations scaled to their capabilities. This approach proved remarkably effective. Using his molecular manipulation, Izuku created safe but convincing disaster scenarios. Miniature buildings that could collapse without danger, controllable fires that generated heat and light without burning, and rescue dummies with simulated life signs that responded to the children's actions. More surprising than the success of these simulations was Izuku's interaction with the children themselves. Rather than maintaining his usual distance, he engaged directly, adjusting his communication style to connect with each child individually. When one particularly difficult student refused to participate, declaring heroes boring and fake, Izuku knelt beside him instead of dismissing the behavior. "Heroes aren't perfect," he stated, something new in his voice, a vulnerability that hadn't been present before. "We make mistakes, we sometimes fail. What makes someone a hero isn't perfection, but the decision to keep trying regardless of failure." The authenticity in this admission reached the child in a way that displays of power couldn't have. By the end of the session, even the most reluctant students were fully engaged, and the supervising heroes watched in amazement as Izuku, once known for his clinical detachment, connected genuinely with each child. "Your approach was unexpected," Gang Orca commented afterward. "I've read your file, Midoriya. Your tactical capabilities are well documented, but your emotional intelligence wasn't noted as a strength." "Recent developments have expanded my operational parameters," Izuku replied, then after a moment added, "I'm becoming more complete." This integration process continued to accelerate as UA, the school festival, approached, an event designed to boost morale and provide students with a normal high school experience despite the increasing villain threats. Initially, Izuku viewed the festival as a non-essential activity, focusing instead on his training and ongoing work with Eri. However, when Class 1A decided to perform a concert and dance showcase, something unexpected happened. They unanimously requested his participation. "We need you, Midoriya," Jiro explained, her usual coolness replaced by earnest sincerity. "Your molecular manipulation could create light and sound effects beyond anything conventional equipment could produce. And we want you there as our classmate," Uraraka added warmly. "Not just for your abilities." This simple acknowledgement, being wanted for himself, not just his powers, resonated with Izuku in a way he hadn't anticipated. After a moment's consideration, he nodded. "I'll participate," he agreed, "though my dancing capabilities are suboptimal." This drew genuine laughter from his classmates, not mockery but warm amusement at his characteristically precise self-assessment. As preparations for the festival continued, Izuku divided his time between training, his ongoing work with Eri, and surprisingly genuine engagement with the performance preparations. Using his molecular manipulation, he created extraordinarily complex light displays that responded dynamically to the music, enhancing Jiru's sound waves to create three-dimensional audio experiences that surrounded the audience. The day before the festival, however, a new threat emerged. Intelligence reports identified Gentle Criminal, a flamboyant villain known for publicity stunts, planning to infiltrate UA during the event. Though not considered dangerous by conventional standards, any breach of UA. As security, so soon after previous incidents, would have devastating consequences for the school's reputation. Izuku, detecting unusual molecular signatures during his regular perimeter scan, teleported to the school's boundary and encountered Gentle and his accomplice, La Brava, attempting to bypass the security system. "My apologies, but I can't allow you to proceed," he stated calmly, golden energy shimmering around him as he blocked their path. "Ah, an early rising student," Gentle exclaimed theatrically. "How unfortunate that you've encountered us. We have no desire to harm you, merely to make our statement." Izuku analyzed them quickly, his enhanced perception noting the unusual elastic properties of Gentle's body and the electronic device La Brava carried. "Your quirk allows you to elasticize anything you touch," he observed. "Creative but limited in application against someone who can manipulate molecular structures directly." Gentle's eyes widened slightly. "You're well informed, but knowledge doesn't equal capability." The villain launched his attack, elasticizing the air itself to create bouncing platforms. Izuku simply stood his ground, adjusting the molecular density around him to neutralize the effect. "Physical laws are consistent," he stated. "Your elasticization relies on molecular bonds that I can reconfigure at will." Despite the obvious power differential, Gentle fought with surprising skill and innovation, combining his quirk with environmental factors in ways that would have challenged most pro heroes. Throughout the encounter, Izuku maintained minimal force, recognizing something unusual in his opponent. "Your criminal profile doesn't align with your tactical approach," he noted as he systematically countered another attack. "Your objectives appear performative rather than harmful." "Every great deed requires an audience," Gentle declared, though his theatrical confidence was clearly faltering as none of his techniques proved effective. When La Brava activated her love quirk, temporarily boosting Gentle's power, Izuku simply adjusted his countermeasures accordingly, containing the enhanced attacks without escalation. Finally, as Gentle prepared a desperate final gambit, Izuku teleported directly behind him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your motivation isn't destruction or personal gain," he stated, his voice lacking its usual clinical quality. "You seek recognition, acknowledgement denied to you previously." Gentle froze, the accuracy of this assessment clearly striking a chord. "What would you know of such things?" he asked quietly. "Someone with power like yours has never faced rejection." "Incorrect," Izuku replied, something new entering his voice, a personal revelation he rarely shared. "Before my current capabilities manifested, I was deemed incapable of heroism, told explicitly to abandon my aspirations." This confession, delivered without self-pity but as simple fact, created an unexpected connection between them. Rather than continuing the fight, Izuku offered an alternative. "The festival includes a streaming component for hospitalized children who cannot attend. Your performance skills could be redirected to this platform, providing the recognition you seek while benefiting others." The simple elegance of this solution, addressing Gentle's core motivation without requiring his defeat or arrest, represented a new approach for Izuku. Rather than simply neutralizing the threat, he had identified and addressed its underlying cause. In the end, Gentle and La Brava were taken into custody, but with Izuku's recommendation for rehabilitation rather than standard incarceration. More significantly, arrangements were made for Gentle's performance skills to be utilized in appropriate contexts after serving a reduced sentence, a resolution that acknowledged both justice and rehabilitation. The festival itself proceeded without further incident, becoming a moment of joy and normalcy in increasingly uncertain times. For Eri, experiencing her first celebration, it was transformative, her smile during Class 1A's performance representing a milestone in her recovery. For Izuku, the event marked something equally significant, as he participated alongside his classmates, creating molecular light displays that danced through the air in perfect harmony with the music. He experienced something rare, genuine enjoyment beyond tactical satisfaction. After the performance, as his classmates celebrated their success, Uraraka approached him with a warm smile. "You were amazing, Deku," she said, using the nickname that had once been an insult but had somehow evolved into a term of affection. "I've never seen you so present before." Izuku considered this assessment. "The integration process is accelerating," he acknowledged. "The emotional barriers are becoming more permeable." Uraraka laughed softly. "Only you would describe having fun as emotional barriers becoming permeable." After a moment, Izuku's expression shifted subtly, the closest he came to a smile. "It was enjoyable," he admitted, "a non-essential but valuable experience." This period of relative calm was short-lived. Shortly after the festival, society was rocked by a coordinated attack on the Hero Billboard chart announcement ceremony. A group of artificially enhanced villains, led by a particularly powerful entity designated High-End, targeted the newly ranked #1 hero, Endeavor. Watching the live broadcast from UA, Izuku immediately recognized the threat level. The high-end Nomu displayed multiple quirks working in perfect coordination, a significant evolution from previous models. "The biological integration is sophisticated," he observed, already calculating intervention options. "Cellular structure suggests accelerated development beyond previous specimens." Without hesitation, he teleported directly to the battle scene, arriving just as Endeavor and Hawks, the #2 hero, were being overwhelmed by the Nomu's regenerative capabilities and multiple quirk factors. "Midoriya?" Hawks exclaimed in surprise as Izuku materialized beside them. "This isn't a place for students." "Provisional license authorizes emergency intervention," Izuku stated simply, his enhanced perception already analyzing the Nomu's molecular composition. "This entity's regeneration operates through accelerated cellular replication using stored biological material." Endeavor, despite his injuries, maintained his combative stance. "I don't need assistance," he growled, flames intensifying around him. "Your core temperature is approaching critical levels," Izuku countered matter-of-factly. "Continued quirk usage at current output will result in self-immolation within approximately 3 minutes. Before Endeavor could protest further, the High End launched another attack, its multiple limbs striking with devastating force, while its regeneration instantly repaired damage from Endeavor's flames. Izuku stepped forward, golden energy surrounding him as he engaged directly. Unlike his previous encounters with Nomu, where he had simply disassembled them molecularly, he took a more measured approach, systematically identifying and neutralizing each quirk factor independently. "Fascinating construction," he noted as he countered a regeneration attempt by altering the cellular replication rate. "The quirk factors are integrated rather than simply accumulated. Evolution in design philosophy." Working in coordination with Endeavor and Hawks, Izuku systematically reduced the Nomu's capabilities, neutralizing its regeneration, countering its strength enhancement, and finally immobilizing it by restructuring its muscular tissue to prevent coordination. As the creature struggled against this molecular imprisonment, Izuku turned to Endeavor. "Your flame temperature is insufficient to permanently neutralize its regenerative capabilities," he stated. "However, by temporarily enhancing your quirk's efficiency at the molecular level, we can achieve the necessary thermal output without exceeding your physiological limitations." Without waiting for permission, he placed a hand on Endeavor's shoulder, golden energy flowing between them. The number one hero's flames suddenly intensified dramatically, burning white-hot rather than their usual orange-red. "What have you done?" Endeavor demanded, feeling the unprecedented power coursing through him. "Optimized oxygen bonding at the molecular level and enhanced thermal conductivity pathways," Izuku explained simply. "The effect is temporary, approximately 30 seconds before cellular degradation begins." Understanding immediately, Endeavor directed this enhanced flames at the immobilized Nomu, generating heat so intense that the creature's entire cellular structure carbonized instantly, preventing any possibility of regeneration. As the threat was neutralized and emergency services arrived to manage the aftermath, media cameras focused on the unusual collaboration between the number one hero and the golden glowing student who had appeared from nowhere. "You didn't need to intervene," Endeavor stated gruffly as medical personnel treated his injuries. "I had the situation under control." Probability analysis indicated a 64% chance of critical failure without intervention, Izuku replied candidly. "Acceptable risk for a single pro-hero perhaps, but civilian casualties would have been statistically certain." Instead of the angry response this blunt assessment might have provoked earlier, Endeavor regarded Izuku with surprising thoughtfulness. "You're not wrong," he admitted after a moment. "And your power, it's not just strength. You understand how things work at a fundamental level." "Molecular manipulation requires comprehensive understanding," Izuku confirmed. As they parted, Endeavor extended an unexpected invitation. "My agency internship offer remains open. Someone with your analytical capabilities could benefit from practical field experience." Izuku considered this briefly. "I'll evaluate the proposal." The aftermath of this encounter brought renewed attention to Izuku's capabilities. Media outlets speculated about the golden student who had assisted Japan's number one hero against a threat that had nearly overwhelmed him. Some questioned whether a mere first-year student should possess such power, while others celebrated the emergence of what they called the next generation's symbol of peace. At UA, this external attention was secondary to the continued development of the students' capabilities. The joint training exercise between classes 1A and 1B provided an opportunity to assess progress and foster healthy competition between the parallel hero courses. When the exercise was announced, Aizawa made a specific addendum regarding Izuku's participation. "Midoriya, given your current capability level, you'll operate under additional restrictions. No molecular disassembly, no teleportation, and power output limited to 15% of your demonstrated capacity." "Understood," Izuku acknowledged. "The limitations will provide valuable experience in constraint management." Despite these restrictions, his team, consisting of himself, Uraraka, Mina, and Shoji, approached their match against Class 1B with coordinated strategy. Rather than relying on his powers, Izuku focused on tactical coordination, analyzing their opponent's quirks and developing counters that maximized his teammates' abilities. Uraraka's zero gravity combined with Mina's acid creates a three-dimensional battlefield advantage, he explained during their planning session. Shoji's sensory capabilities provide perimeter awareness, while my limited molecular manipulation can counter specific quirk applications. What no one expected was how this approach would showcase not just Izuku's power, but his emerging leadership capabilities. Throughout the match, he systematically identified opportunities for his teammates to shine, creating scenarios where their quirks could be utilized to maximum effect, while he provided support rather than dominance. When Monoma from Class 1B attempted to copy Izuku's quirk, the result was illuminating. The copying student briefly glowed golden before the energy dissipated harmlessly. "Interesting," Izuku observed. "Your copy quirk attempts to replicate the genetic expression pattern it identifies as a quirk factor. Since my abilities aren't quirk-based, there's nothing viable to copy." "What do you mean, not quirk-based?" Monoma demanded, clearly frustrated by this unexpected failure. Rather than explaining, Izuku simply redirected the battle, creating an opening for Uraraka to demonstrate her improving combat skills. Her takedown of Monoma, using a combination of zero gravity and the martial arts techniques Gunhead had taught her, drew admiration from both classes. As the exercise continued, a pattern emerged. While still operating at objectively superhuman levels, despite the restrictions, Izuku consistently positioned himself as support rather than primary combatant, enhancing his teammates' effectiveness rather than overshadowing them. "Your approach has changed," Aizawa noted during the post-exercise evaluation. "Previous combat scenarios showed you taking direct control. Today, you functioned primarily as tactical support." "Tactical diversity is essential for comprehensive heroic development," Izuku replied. "Additionally, elevating team performance optimizes overall mission success probability beyond what individual action could achieve." What he didn't articulate but Aizawa clearly understood was the personal dimension of this evolution. Izuku was discovering the value of enabling others rather than simply handling everything himself. This development continued during his internship at the Endeavor Agency, where he worked alongside Todoroki and Bakugo. Despite their historical rivalry, the three students found an effective working dynamic under Endeavor's demanding supervision. During a particularly challenging villain pursuit, Izuku demonstrated this new approach dramatically. Rather than simply teleporting ahead to capture the escaping criminal, which would have been trivially easy for him, he instead enhanced Todoroki's ice and Bakugo's explosions at the molecular level, allowing them to execute a combination attack that successfully contained the threat. "You could have handled that alone in seconds," Todoroki observed afterward, his usual reserve giving way to genuine curiosity. "Why didn't you?" "Your development as heroes is strategically valuable," Izuku replied. "My intervention would have been efficient short-term, but counterproductive long-term." Bakugo, surprisingly, understood the underlying principle first. "You're saying we need to get stronger on our own, not just rely on your freaky powers to save the day." "Essentially correct," Izuku acknowledged, though I would characterize my abilities as unprecedented rather than freaky. This drew an unexpected snort of amusement from Bakugo, perhaps the closest thing to friendly interaction they had ever shared. Endeavor, observing this exchange, later approached Izuku privately. "Your power level is obviously beyond what you're utilizing," he noted bluntly. "Why the restraint?" "Multiple factors," Izuku replied. "Primarily, unrestrained power application destabilizes social dynamics and creates dependency patterns that reduce overall heroic effectiveness." "In plain language, you're holding back so others can grow," Endeavor translated, showing more insight than his gruff demeanor suggested. "Not what I expected from someone with your capabilities." After a moment's consideration, he added, "My pursuit of power was single-minded for most of my career. It cost me everything that actually mattered." This rare moment of vulnerability from the number one hero seemed to register with Izuku. "Integration of power with purpose requires balance," he observed, "a lesson I'm still processing." The nature of that balance was tested dramatically in the months that followed. As villain activity increased following All Might's retirement, society began experiencing what analysts termed hero fatigue, a growing skepticism about the effectiveness of the professional hero system. This cultural shift coincided with the emergence of a vigilante calling himself Stain's successor, who targeted heroes he deemed unworthy while leaving evidence of their supposed failings at each crime scene. Though not as lethal as the original hero killer, his activities further undermined public confidence. When Izuku encountered him during a regular patrol, finding the vigilante standing over an injured pro-hero, the confrontation revealed something unexpected. "You're different from the others," the masked vigilante observed as Izuku blocked his escape route, golden energy surrounding him. "The golden student from UA, the one who understands true heroism." "Your assessment is based on incomplete information," Izuku replied, analyzing the vigilante's movement patterns and weapon configuration. "True heroism operates within societal frameworks, not individual moral judgments." "Systems fail," the vigilante countered, his voice intense with conviction. "Heroes have become products, not protectors. You know this. I've studied your interventions. You act on necessity, not publicity." This accurate observation gave Izuku momentary pause. "Reform requires improvement, not destruction," he stated finally. "Your methods undermine the very principle you claim to uphold." Their subsequent battle was brief but revealing. The vigilante displayed exceptional combat skills but was clearly outmatched by Izuku's abilities. When finally subdued, he made a final appeal. "You have the power to change everything," he gasped as Izuku secured him with capture tape. "Why maintain a broken system?" Instead of dismissing this question, Izuku considered it with uncharacteristic introspection. "Systems evolve through internal adaptation," he replied finally. "External destruction creates chaos, not improvement." As authorities took the vigilante into custody, Izuku remained troubled by the encounter. The questions raised resonated with his own emerging understanding of heroism, the balance between power and restraint, between individual action and societal structure. This philosophical quandary deepened during what became known as his Dark Hero period, a span of several weeks when Izuku operated with minimal oversight, addressing threats that conventional heroes couldn't handle due to bureaucratic constraints or capability limitations. Using his teleportation and molecular sensing, he systematically dismantled emerging villain organizations before they could establish themselves, neutralized black market operations, trafficking in quirk enhancement drugs, and intervened in crisis situations worldwide where local heroes were overwhelmed. This global activity drew international attention. Heroes from various countries attempted to either recruit or restrict him, while intelligence agencies sought to understand the full extent of his capabilities. Throughout this period, Izuku maintained clinical precision in his interventions, using only necessary force, focusing on threat neutralization rather than punishment, and avoiding political entanglements. Yet something was changing within him. The emotional integration continued accelerating, and with it, the void became increasingly difficult to contain. Each instance of suffering he encountered, each failure of the system to protect the vulnerable, resonated more deeply than before. During a particularly challenging intervention, stopping a terrorist organization from deploying quirk-based weapons in a civilian center, the void emerged more fully than it had since Kamino Ward. Dark energy swirled around him as he systematically neutralized the entire organization, his usual precision giving way to cold efficiency that bordered on ruthlessness. "Your eyes," one of the local heroes who had arrived as backup whispered, "they're completely black." With visible effort, Izuku reasserted control, the darkness receding gradually. "Integration protocols temporarily insufficient," he acknowledged, his voice returning to its normal register. "Adjustment required." This incident prompted him to return to UA for consultation with Aizawa, who had become something of a mentor regarding his ongoing integration process. "The suppression is becoming counterproductive," Izuku reported during their private session. "Emotional barriers are dissolving faster than anticipated, but the void remains compartmentalized. The resulting dissonance is creating operational instability." Aizawa considered this with characteristic directness. "You're trying to be two separate entities. the controlled hero and the suppressed darkness. It's not sustainable. Integration carries significant risks, Izuku countered. The Void's primary impulse is elimination of threats through maximum force application. Is it? Aizawa challenged. Or is that just how you've defined it because it's easier to suppress something you perceive as entirely negative? This question struck deeper than expected. Izuku fell silent, processing the implication with his enhanced mind. The Void emerged initially in response to perceived injustice, he acknowledged finally. Its manifestations correlate with threats to innocent lives or systematic failures of protection. Sounds like heroic motivation to me, Aizawa observed, just without the restraint you've developed. This perspective that the Void might represent not simply destruction, but a raw, unfiltered protective instinct, offered a new framework for understanding the integration process. Rather than containing a separate malevolent entity, perhaps Izuku needed to reconcile two aspects of the same heroic impulse, the calculated protector and the primal guardian. Before he could fully explore this concept, a new international crisis emerged that would test his evolving understanding in unexpected ways. America's top hero, Star and Stripe, had engaged Shigaraki, or rather, the entity Shigaraki was becoming as All for One increasingly dominated their shared form in direct combat over the Pacific Ocean. Her quirk, New Order, allowed her to impose rules on reality itself, making her one of the few heroes globally with power potentially comparable to Izuku's. Monitoring the situation through his enhanced senses, Izuku detected the battle's quantum signatures from thousands of miles away. The interaction between New Order and All for One's quirk-stealing ability created distinctive reality distortions that registered on his molecular awareness. Without hesitation, he teleported directly to the battle scene, arriving to find Star and Stripe already heavily injured, her massive F-22 support aircraft destroyed, and Shigaraki, All for One, preparing to deliver a final blow that would allow him to steal her reality-altering quirk. Interesting arrival, the villain observed, his body a disturbing hybrid of Shigaraki's decay-marked form and All for One's imposing presence. The golden student I've heard so much about. Star and Stripe looked up in surprise as Izuku positioned himself between her and the villain. "You a student?" she gasped, her American accent pronounced. "You need to retreat. His decay will. Molecular deconstruction can be countered through anticipatory reconstruction," Izuku stated calmly, golden energy surrounding him as he assessed the situation. "Your quirk, New Order, operates through quantum entanglement to establish localized reality parameters. You understand it just by observing?" Star asked, clearly astonished despite her injuries. "Similar operational principles to my own abilities," Izuku confirmed, then turned his attention to Shigaraki, All for One. "Your current form is unstable. Cellular degradation at quantum level indicates incomplete integration between host and parasitic consciousness." The villain's expression shifted to one of intrigue. "You see more than most," he acknowledged, "but observation won't save you from decay." When Shigaraki launched his attack, decay spreading rapidly through the air itself, Izuku countered by altering the molecular composition of the space between them, creating a zone where the decay effect couldn't propagate. Simultaneously, he began molecular repair of Star and Stripe's most critical injuries. "I can stabilize your condition temporarily," he informed her, "but your quirk remains this entity's primary objective. If acquired, New Order would grant him reality manipulation capabilities beyond his current parameters." Understanding immediately, Star made a critical decision. "Then he can't have it," she declared, using her remaining strength to impose a final rule. New Order will revolt against other quirks. This self-destruct mechanism, her quirk programmed to destroy itself if stolen, represented a heroic sacrifice, but Izuku recognized that it wouldn't be enough. Even in its death throes, New Order would only destroy some of All for One's accumulated quirks, not prevent the villain's continued threat. In that moment, Izuku did something unprecedented. Using his molecular manipulation with precision beyond anything he had previously attempted, he established a quantum entanglement between himself and Star's fading quirk, temporarily incorporating aspects of New Order's rule-setting capability into his own power matrix. Golden energy flared around him, taking on a distinctive star pattern as he spoke a single rule. Izuku Midoriya's cosmic power cannot be copied, stolen, or nullified. The quantum lock established, he turned his full attention to Shigaraki All for One. What followed was combat on a scale few had ever witnessed, reality itself seeming to warp around them as decay met molecular manipulation, stolen quirks encountered cosmic energy, and two entities with power beyond conventional limits clashed above the Pacific. Throughout the battle, Izuku maintained precise control, systematically nullifying each quirk Shigaraki attempted to use, while simultaneously protecting Star and Stripe and preventing collateral damage to distant shipping lanes and aircraft. Your power, Shigaraki All for One observed during a momentary lull, it isn't a quirk at all, is it? Something more fundamental. Something I should have foreseen. Correct assessment, Izuku confirmed, golden energy swirling around him as he prepared his next attack, which renders your primary acquisition strategy ineffective. With methodical precision, he began targeting the unstable connection between Shigaraki and All for One, using his molecular manipulation to exacerbate the integration flaws in their shared form. This approach, attacking not the physical body but the metaphysical bond between the two consciousnesses, caught the villain completely unprepared. Shigaraki All for One retreated, his form beginning to destabilize under Izuku's targeted attack. "This isn't over," he snarled, decay spreading around him in a defensive perimeter. "You've merely delayed the inevitable." "Probability assessment suggests otherwise," Izuku replied calmly, maintaining pressure on the quantum fault lines in the villain's composite consciousness. When international heroes finally arrived as backup, they found Star and Stripe alive but critically injured, Shigaraki All for One gone, and Izuku calmly establishing a molecular stabilization field to prevent her condition from deteriorating further. "You saved me," she stated, her voice weak but determined. "And you somehow borrowed my quirk?" "Temporary quantum entanglement," Izuku explained. "The effect has already dissipated, but the rule established remains in effect due to causality anchoring." As medical teams took over Star's care, the international heroes regarded Izuku with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. His power level, demonstrated on a global stage against a threat that had nearly defeated America's #1 hero, raised both appreciation and concern. "We've heard about you," one of the American heroes said carefully. "Japan's golden student, but I don't think anyone realized just how powerful you actually are." "Power assessment is relative and contextual," Izuku replied simply. "I utilize the necessary force for the specific threat parameters." Despite this measured response, news of the encounter spread globally. International hero agencies and government organizations began formal assessments of what they termed the Midoriya factor, how a single individual with his capability level might affect global hero operations and power balances. At UA, this external attention was secondary to a more immediate crisis. Intelligence suggested a traitor had been operating within the school, providing information to the League of Villains that facilitated previous attacks. The revelation shook the foundation of trust that had developed among the students. As security protocols tightened and investigations began, Izuku approached Principal Nezu with a direct proposal. "My molecular scanning can identify unusual communication patterns and verify biological stress indicators during targeted questioning," he explained. "A systematic application could efficiently identify any infiltration." Nezu, his intelligent eyes studying Izuku carefully, shook his head and create an atmosphere of pervasive suspicion that would destroy the community we're trying to protect. "There are considerations beyond efficiency, Midoriya." This perspective, prioritizing social cohesion over tactical optimization, represented a value judgment that the earlier Izuku might have dismissed. Now, with his evolving integration, he recognized its validity. "A balanced approach, then," he suggested. "I'll conduct passive monitoring only, alerting you to anomalies without direct intervention." This compromise proved effective. Within days, Izuku's enhanced perception detected unusual behavior patterns in Aoyama, subtle stress responses during specific topics, altered molecular signatures indicating prolonged anxiety, and distinctive communication patterns suggesting external contact. Rather than immediately reporting these findings, Izuku approached Aoyama directly, finding him alone on UA's grounds late one evening. "Your parents made a deal with All for One," he stated without preamble, his direct approach startling Aoyama into dropping the cheese plate he habitually carried. In exchange for giving you a quirk, you've been forced to provide information about UA. Aoyama's face crumpled in a mixture of relief and despair. "How long have you known?" he whispered. "Recently confirmed, previously suspected," Izuku replied, then did something unexpected. He sat beside Aoyama rather than restraining or reporting him. Threat assessment indicates coercion rather than voluntary betrayal. Your family is being threatened. Tears spilled down Aoyama's face as he nodded. "He'll kill them if I don't comply. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I just wanted to be like everyone else, to have a quirk of my own." Something shifted in Izuku's expression, a softening that would have been impossible months earlier. "Fear for family is a powerful motivator," he acknowledged. "But continued information transfer to All for One is tactically unsustainable." "I don't have a choice," Aoyama insisted desperately. "Incorrect," Izuku countered. "There are always alternatives to binary outcomes. In this case, we can establish controlled information flow while implementing family protection protocols." This approach, offering solutions rather than judgment, represented Izuku's evolving understanding of heroism. Instead of simply neutralizing the threat Aoyama represented, he recognized the complex human factors involved and sought resolution that addressed the core issue. With Aoyama's cooperation, Izuku developed a comprehensive strategy that both Principal Nezu and key faculty members approved. The French student would continue providing information, but carefully curated data that seemed valuable while actually misleading the League about UA's true security measures and student deployments. Meanwhile, his parents were quietly relocated to a secure facility under hero protection. This resolution, protecting both the school and the coerced family, demonstrated a nuanced approach to heroism beyond simple power application. Yet it also accelerated the internal pressure Izuku had been experiencing. Each emotional engagement, each complex moral decision, made the void harder to contain as a separate entity. The breaking point came unexpectedly during what should have been a routine patrol. Izuku, working alongside Uraraka and Ida as part of their hero studies practical training, encountered a situation that defied standard response protocols, a child hostage scenario involving a villain whose quirk allowed him to transfer injuries between linked targets. "Step any closer and whatever happens to me happens to her instead," the villain declared, maintaining contact with the terrified young girl he held. Uraraka and Ida hesitated, recognizing the tactical stalemate. Standard hero procedures for such situations involved negotiation and careful quirk application to create an opening. But as Izuku assessed the scene, something fundamental shifted within him. The girl's fear, her absolute terror registered on his enhanced senses in excruciating detail. Her elevated heart rate, the adrenaline flooding her system, the microscopic tears forming in her eyes, all of it created a response he couldn't compartmentalize. Dark energy began swirling around his golden light, the void emerging not as a separate entity fighting for control, but as an integrated aspect of his power responding to the child's distress. "Release her," he stated, his voice deepening slightly but remaining controlled. "Final warning," the villain smirked. "Or what? You can't touch me without hurting her. That's how heroes work, right? No innocent casualties." "Correct," Izuku acknowledged, the darkness now fully intermingling with his golden energy in a swirling pattern that was neither purely light nor dark, but something new. Heroes protect the innocent by any means necessary. With unprecedented precision, he extended his molecular manipulation not to attack the villain directly, but to sever the quantum connection between the linked targets. The injury transfer quirk, operating on principles of entangled biological states, suddenly found its fundamental mechanism disrupted. The villain's expression changed from confidence to confusion to fear in rapid succession as he realized his protection was gone. Before he could harm the child, Izuku teleported directly to them, separating them with gentle but irresistible force. "You're safe now," he told the girl softly, the swirling energy around him stabilizing into a harmonious pattern of gold and shadow. "He can't hurt you anymore." As Uraraka secured the child and Ida restrained the villain, both stared at Izuku with a mixture of awe and concern. "Midoriya, your energy," Ida began hesitantly. "It's different." "Yes," Izuku acknowledged, examining the manifestation with analytical interest. The integration has accelerated. Void suppression is no longer sustainable or necessary. Are you okay? Uraraka asked, genuine concern in her voice. Izuku considered this question with unprecedented introspection. I am. More complete than before, he replied finally. The protective impulse the void represents is not inherently contradictory to heroic principles when properly directed. This incident marked a turning point in his development. Rather than continuing to suppress the void as a separate, dangerous entity, Izuku began consciously exploring integration, understanding the darkness not as a threat to be contained, but as a necessary aspect of complete heroism. That night, in the privacy of his dormitory room, he initiated a deliberate internal confrontation. Using meditation techniques developed with his father's guidance, he entered a mental state where the boundaries between consciousness and quantum reality blurred. Within this mindscape, the void manifested as a separate entity, a shadowed version of himself with eyes of absolute darkness. For the first time, Izuku addressed it directly, not as an enemy, but as a part of himself. You're not a malfunction, he acknowledged. You're a response to perceived injustice, the protective instinct without constraint. The shadowed figure regarded him impassively. I am efficiency, it stated, its voice deeper but recognizably his own. Direct action without hesitation, protection through elimination of threats. At any cost, Izuku added, without consideration for systemic consequences or proportional response. Calculation creates delay. Delay creates casualties. The void's perspective was simple, but not without logic. And without calculation, without restraint, protection becomes destruction, Izuku countered. We're incomplete separately, inefficient. For the first time, the void seemed to consider this perspective. Integration rather than suppression or dominance, it observed. Interesting hypothesis. Not hypothesis, Izuku corrected. Empirical evidence supports it. Our most effective operations occur when working in harmony rather than opposition. Within the mindscape, golden light and darkness began to swirl around each other, not fighting for dominance but exploring patterns of coexistence. The void extended a shadowed hand toward Izuku's golden one. Terms of integration? It asked simply. Balance, Izuku replied without hesitation. Protective force tempered by calculated restraint. Maximum effectiveness without unnecessary destruction. Acceptable parameters, the void acknowledged. Integration initiated. As their hands met, the mindscape exploded in a swirl of gold and shadow, neither overwhelming the other but forming a new pattern, a harmonious duality rather than a contested dichotomy. When Izuku emerged from the meditative state hours later, something fundamental had changed. The constant effort of suppression that had been his companion since the transformation was gone, replaced by a new equilibrium. Golden energy still surrounded him, but now with subtle patterns of darkness woven throughout, not fighting the light but complementing it. Integration complete, he noted aloud, his voice carrying a new resonance. Operational efficiency increased approximately 72%, emotional processing normalized. This transformation couldn't have come at a more critical time. Intelligence reports indicated that All for One Shigaraki had accelerated their plans following the failed attempt to acquire Star and Stripe's quirk. The villain coalition had expanded dramatically, incorporating international elements and developing a comprehensive strategy to dismantle hero society globally. As UA and other hero institutions prepared for what intelligence agencies were calling the final war, Izuku's newly integrated capabilities became central to defensive planning. His ability to teleport globally, coupled with his molecular scanning range, provided real-time intelligence that no conventional system could match. During the strategy session at UA, where representatives from hero agencies worldwide had gathered, Izuku presented his assessment with unprecedented clarity. All for One's strategic objective isn't simply destruction of the hero system, he explained, displaying a holographic model of global villain movements created through his molecular manipulation. He's implementing systematic destabilization of societal support structures to create conditions where quirk-based authoritarianism becomes the only viable security option, essentially making society beg for a strong hand to save them from chaos, Hawks observed grimly. Correct, Izuku confirmed. The simultaneous attacks planned for major cities aren't random terrorism, but calculated pressure points designed to collapse emergency response capabilities. As the gathered heroes debated response strategies, something new emerged in Izuku's approach: a seamless integration of tactical precision with genuine emotional understanding. When discussing civilian protection protocols, he didn't simply calculate efficiency metrics, but addressed the psychological impact of evacuation procedures on vulnerable populations. Fear amplifies quirk instability, he noted, his integrated consciousness providing insights his previously compartmentalized mind couldn't have synthesized. Evacuation protocols must address emotional stability as well as physical safety to prevent secondary crisis events. This holistic approach, combining his unlimited power with genuine human understanding, created response strategies that were both technically optimal and psychologically sound. The gathered heroes, many initially wary of the golden student with seemingly unlimited power, found themselves increasingly relying on his integrated perspective. As preparations continued, Izuku experienced another unexpected development: genuine concern for his classmates and teachers who would face unprecedented danger in the coming conflict. This wasn't the clinical risk assessment of before, but authentic emotional investment in their well-being. The night before the anticipated global attack, he sought out Uraraka, finding her on UA's roof, staring at the stars. "Your training with One for All has progressed significantly," he observed as he joined her. "Output capacity approximately 45% based on molecular assessment." She smiled slightly at his characteristic precision. "Only you would know my exact percentage without me telling you, Deku." After a moment of comfortable silence, she asked the question, clearly weighing on her. "Tomorrow, how bad will it be?" Izuku considered this seriously, his integrated consciousness processing both tactical projections and emotional implications. "Casualty projections are significant," he acknowledged, "but not fixed. Probability remains fluid based on intervention variables." "In normal words," she requested gently. "We can win," he translated, "but it won't be without cost." Something in his tone, a depth of understanding that transcended pure analysis, made her turn to study him more carefully. "You're different," she observed. "More present somehow." "Integration completed," he confirmed. "The void is no longer a separate entity to be suppressed, but an integrated aspect of my consciousness. The resulting synthesis has expanded my perspective." "Is that why your energy looks different, the gold with those dark patterns woven through it?" He nodded. "Visual manifestation of quantum integration. More efficient, more stable, and..." He hesitated, searching for the right word. "More complete." As they stood together under the stars, Izuku experienced something that would have been impossible before the integration: genuine appreciation for this moment of connection before the coming storm. Not just tactical value, but human value. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Uraraka said softly, "I'm glad you're with us, Deku." "As am I," he replied, the simple statement carrying weight beyond its words. The final war began at dawn with simultaneous villain attacks across the globe, a coordinated assault on hero society unprecedented in scale and sophistication. As predicted, the primary objective wasn't simply destruction, but systematic collapse of response capabilities and public confidence. Izuku's role in the defense was equally unprecedented. Using his teleportation abilities, he established what tacticians later termed omnipresent response, appearing at critical pressure points worldwide to neutralize primary threats before conventional heroes could be overwhelmed. In Tokyo, where All for One Shigaraki personally led the assault on UA, Izuku coordinated with the assembled heroes to establish layered defenses. His integrated consciousness allowed him to process battlefield conditions with both analytical precision and intuitive understanding of psychological factors. Nomu deployment patterns indicate psychological warfare objectives beyond physical destruction, he reported to the command center after his first reconnaissance teleport. They're targeting symbolic locations to maximize media impact rather than strategic assets. Classic terror tactics, Aizawa noted grimly. Fear multiplies their effective force. Precisely, Izuku confirmed, which means counter-messaging becomes as tactically significant as physical containment. This insight led to a revised defense strategy that incorporated public communication alongside combat operations. Heroes not only fighting villains, but actively demonstrating protection and reassurance to civilians. countering the psychological warfare component of the attack. As the battle intensified, Izuku's newly integrated capabilities became increasingly evident. Moving between conflict zones with calculated precision, he displayed not just overwhelming power, but perfect calibration, using exactly the necessary force for each situation without excess. When a group of civilians found themselves trapped between Nomu attackers and structural collapse, Izuku's response demonstrated this evolved approach. Rather than simply eliminating the threats through molecular disassembly, he created a localized stasis field that slowed time within a specific radius, giving evacuation teams precious additional seconds to reach the civilians, while he systematically neutralized the Nomu with targeted precision. "The way he's fighting is different," Todoroki observed as they defended UA's main campus alongside him. "It's still overwhelmingly powerful, but there's purpose beyond just winning." Bakugo, launching explosions at approaching villains, grudgingly nodded. "He's not just calculating anymore. He actually gives a damn." The critical moment came when All For One Shigaraki finally breached UA's perimeter defenses, bringing the battle to the heart of hero society. The merged villain's power had grown exponentially, his body a disturbing amalgamation of Shigaraki's decay capabilities and All For One's accumulated quirks, enhanced by scientific modifications that pushed the boundaries of human limitation. As students and faculty engaged in desperate combat against this unprecedented threat, Izuku teleported directly to the central confrontation, where Endeavor, Hawks, and several other top heroes were already being overwhelmed. "Interesting evolution," All For One Shigaraki observed as Izuku appeared, the villain's distorted face showing genuine curiosity. "Your energy signature has changed, no longer purely light, but something integrated. Your assessment is accurate." Izuku acknowledged, the swirling patterns of gold and shadow around him intensifying. "Integration, rather than suppression. Something you attempted with Shigaraki, but failed to achieve due to force dominance rather than synthesis." This observation clearly struck a nerve, the villain's composite face twisted in anger, bold words from someone who still doesn't understand the true nature of power. "Let me educate you." What followed was combat on a scale that defied conventional description. All For One unleashed accumulated quirks in devastating combination. Air cannons enhanced by decay, strength multiplication coupled with impact reversion, warp gates delivering precision attacks from unexpected angles. Yet Izuku, with his newly integrated consciousness, countered each with perfect anticipation. Molecular manipulation neutralizing decay, quantum adjustments redirecting force, teleportation matching and exceeding the warp gate's versatility. "You cannot win through conventional means," Izuku stated as they reached a momentary stalemate, the surrounding battlefield devastated by their exchange. "Your quirk accumulation strategy, while impressive, remains fundamentally limited by biological compatibility constraints." "Perhaps," All For One acknowledged, his composite form regenerating from damage sustained. "But I don't need to defeat you directly. Merely outlast you while my forces complete their objectives worldwide." "Incorrect assumption," Izuku countered. "Global villain operations have been neutralized with 87.3% effectiveness over the past 34 minutes. This revelation visibly shocked the villain. "Impossible. Even you can't be everywhere simultaneously." "Not simultaneously," Izuku confirmed, "but with sufficient teleportation speed and integrated tactical processing, functional omnipresence is achievable." As if to demonstrate, he vanished briefly, teleporting to neutralize a distant threat before returning to the confrontation seconds later. "Your strategic model relied on overwhelming hero response capabilities through simultaneous pressure. That strategy has failed." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across All For One's composite features. The villain had built his centuries-long strategy on calculated probability and power accumulation, but Izuku represented a variable he couldn't fully account for: power beyond quirk mechanics operating with integrated purpose rather than raw force. The battle resumed with renewed intensity, but a shift had occurred in its fundamental dynamic. All For One, recognizing his strategic disadvantage, began fighting with increasing desperation rather than calculated precision. Izuku, conversely, maintained perfect integration of power and purpose. Each attack was precisely calibrated, each defense optimally positioned. The swirling patterns of gold and shadow surrounding him moved in perfect harmony, neither dominating but together creating something beyond either individual aspect. As the villain sustained increasing damage, something unexpected occurred. The unstable integration between All For One and Shigaraki began to fracture under pressure, their composite consciousness separating into conflicting impulses. Izuku, with his enhanced perception, immediately detected this metaphysical instability. "Your integration is failing," he observed. Force dominance creates inherent structural weaknesses at the quantum consciousness level. Seizing this opportunity, he adjusted his approach, targeting not the villain's physical form, but the unstable boundary between the two consciousnesses, using his molecular manipulation to exacerbate the separation while simultaneously containing the decay power to prevent collateral damage. "What are you doing?" All For One's voice dominated as the composite form began visibly separating, Shigaraki's consciousness re-emerging as a distinct entity within their shared physical form. "Demonstrating true integration," Izuku replied, the balanced patterns of light and shadow around him highlighting the contrast with the villain's forced and failing merger. "Synthesis requires mutual recognition and acceptance, not domination." With methodical precision, he continued the separation process while simultaneously establishing a molecular containment field around them to prevent escape. As the two consciousnesses pulled apart, Shigaraki's original personality, buried beneath All For One's dominant will, began reasserting itself. "Stop him!" All For One commanded the decaying body they shared. "Use our power to destroy him." But Shigaraki, emerging from prolonged suppression, resisted. "You used me," he gasped, his distinctive face partially reforming on one side of their shared form. "Made me your vessel. No more." This internal conflict created the opening Izuku needed. With perfectly calibrated force, he separated the two entities completely. All For One's consciousness extracted from Shigaraki's body and contained within a specialized molecular field that prevented quirk activation or consciousness transfer. As All For One raged within this perfect prison, Izuku turned his attention to Shigaraki, who collapsed as a separate entity, his body reverting to its original form, though still marked by the decay quirk's physical manifestations. "Tamura Shigaraki," Izuku addressed him directly. "Your consciousness was suppressed but not eliminated. Quantum traces indicate you retained awareness throughout the integration." Shigaraki looked up with haunted eyes. "I saw everything, did everything, couldn't stop it." Rather than immediately restraining him, Izuku knelt beside the villain who had caused so much destruction. With his integrated consciousness, he perceived not just the physical reality, but the quantum patterns of Shigaraki's traumatic past, the accumulated suffering and manipulation that had shaped him into a weapon. "Your decay quirk manifested in response to trauma," Izuku observed, his voice carrying neither judgment nor pity but simple recognition. "The hands you wore represented both connection to and separation from your family." Shigaraki stared at him in shock. "How could you possibly know that?" "Integrated perception allows trauma pattern recognition at the quantum consciousness level," Izuku explained. "Your destructive impulse originated as protective response to perceived abandonment." This recognition, seeing beyond Shigaraki's actions to the wounded human beneath, represented the full realization of Izuku's integrated consciousness. The analytical precision of the Sentry, combined then with the Void's raw understanding of darkness, created something neither could have achieved alone: perfect comprehension without loss of purpose. "It doesn't change what I've done," Shigaraki stated, looking at his decay-marked hands. "Correct," Izuku acknowledged. "But understanding origins creates possibility for reconstruction rather than simple elimination." As hero reinforcements arrived to secure All For One and the now separated Shigaraki, they found Izuku standing calmly at the center of the devastation, the integrated patterns of gold and shadow surrounding him in perfect balance. "It's over," he informed them simply. "All For One has been neutralized and contained. Shigaraki has been separated and will require specialized rehabilitation." The aftermath of what became known as the Final War brought unprecedented changes to hero society. With All For One, the shadow that had manipulated events for centuries, finally contained beyond any possibility of escape, fundamental reforms became possible. Izuku's role evolved as well. His integrated capabilities, combining unlimited power with perfect understanding, made him uniquely qualified to address not just the physical consequences of the conflict, but its psychological and social dimensions as well. When the Hero Public Safety Commission proposed a global quirk registration and regulation system in response to the crisis, Izuku presented an alternative framework based on integrated understanding rather than control. Quirk expression represents evolutionary adaptation, he explained to the international committee assembled to address the post-war reality. Regulatory approaches based on restriction rather than integration create systemic instability through psychological resistance patterns. His proposal, focusing on education, support infrastructure, and community integration rather than surveillance and control, represented a fundamental shift in how society approached the continuing evolution of quirks. Rather than fearing difference, his framework embraced diversity as strengthening the whole. This perspective, made credible by his demonstrated power and the crucial role he had played in the final war, gradually reshaped global policy. Nations that had initially moved toward restrictive measures found themselves implementing variations of what became known as the integration model. At UA, now rebuilt after the devastation of the final battle, Izuku accepted a specialized teaching position despite still being technically a student. His unique perspective and capabilities made him invaluable in training the next generation of heroes, not just in combat techniques, but in the integrated understanding of heroism itself. Power without purpose creates instability, he explained to his first class, the integrated patterns of gold and shadow flowing around him as he demonstrated precise molecular manipulation. Purpose without power limits effectiveness. True heroism requires both in balance. His former classmates, now emerging as heroes in their own right, found their own paths shaped by his example. Uraraka, having mastered One for All's capabilities, developed a rescue-focused hero career that combined her zero gravity with her enhanced strength to create unprecedented evacuation and disaster response protocols. Todoroki established a new agency focused on rehabilitation rather than simple incarceration, using his balanced fire and ice to symbolize the integration of seemingly opposite forces. Even Bakugo, ever competitive, found his explosive approach tempered by strategic consideration. Still intense, but now purposefully directed. For Shigaraki, the path forward was neither simple nor straightforward. Under specialized care that Izuku helped design, the former villain began the long process of confronting his traumatic past and the actions it had driven. His decay quirk, once purely destructive, gradually came under conscious control as he learned integration rather than suppression. Destruction and creation are complementary aspects of the same fundamental process, Izuku explained during one of their sessions. Molecular deconstruction creates potential for reconstruction. The same applies to consciousness and identity. Perhaps most significantly, Eri, the child whose rescue had marked a turning point in Izuku's development, flourished under his guidance. Her rewind quirk, once a source of terror and exploitation, became a remarkable healing capability as she learned precise control through his molecular training techniques. "Your ability doesn't define you," he told her during a particularly challenging session. "It's simply an extension of your consciousness. Integration rather than separation creates stability." As years passed, society gradually stabilized around a new equilibrium. The hero system, once centered on competition and rankings, evolved toward a more collaborative model that emphasized complementary capabilities and community integration. Villains still emerged, but without all-for-one's manipulative influence, they tended to be isolated and manageable rather than systemically threatening. Throughout this transformation, Izuku remained a constant presence, not dominating from above, but supporting from within. His power, while unmatched, was no longer what defined him in the public consciousness. Instead, it was his integrated understanding, his ability to perceive both the molecular reality and the human dimension simultaneously. When asked by a journalist on the 5th anniversary of the final war if he considered himself the new symbol of peace, his response captured this evolved perspective. "Symbols represent ideals, but exist separate from reality," he observed, the perfectly balanced patterns of gold and shadow flowing around him as he spoke. Integration requires direct engagement rather than symbolic representation, We don't need new symbols, we need connected reality. This philosophy, engagement rather than symbolism, integration rather than dominance, gradually reshaped the very concept of heroism itself. Future generations would come to understand heroics not as exceptional individuals standing above society, but as integrated participants working within it, their unique capabilities enhancing the whole rather than separating them from it. For Izuku Midoriya, once a quirkless boy told to abandon his dreams, then transformed into something beyond human limitation, this represented the true fulfillment of his journey. Not merely possessing unlimited power, but achieving perfect integration, the golden light and the void darkness united in balanced purpose. Not a symbol, but a reality. Not a savior from above, but a guardian from within. The sentry and the void no longer separate, but unified in perfect cosmic integration, unlimited power guided by complete understanding. The ultimate hero, not because he could do anything, but because he understood everything.
And now it's time to thank the legends who make these stories possible. To my Symbol of Peace tier supporters, Albert Odejumo, Ignacio, Howie60, Carlos Terry, Rafael Terran, Kevin Hall. Your support keeps the Chronos engine running strong. And to my Hope of the Universe tier supporters, Major and Colsey, you're powering this channel to new heights and giving these what-ifs the chance to shine brighter than ever. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for believing in these stories and helping rewrite the legends.
And that's how Deku, with Sentry's powers, would completely reshape the My Hero Academia universe. From rewriting physics to becoming an unstoppable force of nature, this combination would create the most overpowered hero in anime history. What did you think of this cosmic power-up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this God-tier what-if scenario, smash that like button and subscribe for more mind-bending My Hero Academia content. Until next time, plus ultra!